Good morning to you all. Thank you all again for bearing with us as we went through all these technical difficulties. Officially welcome to the workshop on agri-food value chains and farm mechanization in Bangladesh, organized by the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI, and supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. At this point, please join me in welcoming Dr. Akhtar Ahmed, the country representative for IFPRI Bangladesh, to deliver the welcome address. Dr. Ahmed brings with him a wealth of experience and expertise in the field of agricultural research and policy. His leadership and dedication have been instrumental in driving positive change in Bangladesh's agricultural sector.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Akhtar Bhai, you're audible.
Hello, can you hear me?
Akhtar Bhai, yes, we can hear you.
Yes, you're audible, Akhtar.
The guest of honor, Dr. Mahmood Rahman, Joint Secretary, PPC Wing, Minister of Agriculture, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, colleagues from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, IFPRI and CGIAR, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. As IFPRI country representative in Bangladesh, I am delighted to welcome you to this important event. For a long time, agriculture has been a cornerstone of Bangladesh's economy. Despite declining arable agricultural land, Bangladesh has made commendable progress in boosting domestic food production. In the early 1970s, Bangladesh was a food deficit country with a population of about 75 million. Today, with a population of nearly 170 million, the country is self-sufficient in rice production, which has tripled over the past 3 decades. Agricultural growth has played an important role in reducing poverty in developing countries. In fact, a recent IFPRI study found that agricultural growth is 3 times more effective in alleviating poverty than the other sectors in the economy in Bangladesh. The impact of agriculture goes beyond its direct poverty reduction effects and involves strong growth linkage effects on the entire economy through value chains. Different parts of agri-food value chains, such as packaging, transport, processing, storage, and marketing, have strong growth linkage effects on the entire economy and result in substantial growth in the non-farm sector, leading to increased employment and income. Now, speaking of poverty reduction, agricultural wages have been rising very rapidly since 2005. This has helped increase the incomes of rural landless people and has emerged as a key driver of poverty reduction in Bangladesh. However, higher wages have increased the cost of hired labor, which in turn has decreased farmers' profitability. This is where farm mechanization comes in. Rapid farm mechanization can ease this burden for farmers by reducing cost of production and improving labor productivity. More than 80% of farmers have switched from bullock plow to power tillers for land preparation. However, mechanization remains relatively limited to land preparation. Nearly all farmers still use manual labor for transplanting rice, weeding, and harvesting. Farm mechanization is needed to reduce the higher labor requirement for these activities and thereby reduce cost of production and improve farmers' profitability. Agriculture mechanization can also benefit rural youth. The government already provides substantial financial incentives for buying agricultural machinery. The government could target this assistance to rural youth groups to buy machinery, who can then provide services to farmers for a service charge that includes their profit. Moreover, rural youth can be provided appropriate vocational training for repair and maintenance of farm machinery. This should generate employment and income for a large segment of the rural population who may not want to be involved in agriculture directly. Despite a decline in the GDP share from 23% in 2000 to 12% in 2022, the agricultural sector remains the largest employer in rural Bangladesh, engaging about 45% of the rural labor force. So it is clear that agriculture continues to play a major role in the livelihoods of people in Bangladesh. Over the last 40 years, IFPRI has been proud to work closely with the government of Bangladesh and other development partners in conducting impactful research and offering policy support with the overall aim of enhancing agricultural development and improving food security. Today, we are excited to continue this work by exploring evidence-based options to help agri-food value chains and farm mechanization work better. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussions ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for your insightful welcome address. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next speakers for the welcome address from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Ms. Maria May, Senior Program Officer at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, leads the Gates Foundation's efforts to accelerate impactful usage of digital financial services by unbanked and low-income people globally. And Ms. Snigdha Ali, Bangladesh Country Lead for Inclusive Financial Systems at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, manages initiatives for advancing financial inclusion in Bangladesh with a special focus on increasing women's access to financial products and services. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Maria May and Ms. Snigdha Ali for their address.
Dear IFPRI team and distinguished guests, greetings from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and thanks for giving us this opportunity to participate in this learning session. The Inclusive Financial System team at the Gates Foundation supports to bring the unbanked and underbanked segments of the population into the formal financial system. And financial inclusion through digital modes has the capacity to reach much larger population with less time, less cost, and more convenience than otherwise. The IFS team, the Inclusive Financial Systems team, has been engaged in Bangladesh for about a decade now and supported both the private and the public sectors to build a digitalized, inclusive, and pro-poor financial ecosystem. The country's strategy for Bangladesh has three main thematic areas of focus: data generation through targeted research, fostering innovation through pilots with scalable potentials, and policy advocacy through public-private dialogues and partnerships. Among our key partners are Bikash, A2I, BRAC, BRAC Bank, Bank Asia, PRI, CRD, and such others. And of course, not to mention IFPRI. And we have seen significant advancement in adoption of mobile money, digital infrastructure for payments, innovative financial products, and a number of schemes from the Bangladesh Bank to target the underserved segments of the population. The country, despite its many challenges and limited resources, has managed to build a digital infrastructure and enabling environment for financial inclusion. According to the last Findex data, 53% of Bangladeshi adults are financially included, and the number may grow. We expect it to grow much higher in the next one in 2025. As we have heard from Dr. Ahmed, and given that the agricultural sector contributes 30% to the economy, which accounts to about 53.5 billion US dollars, and the largest sector of employment generation for the economy, while the foundation does have engagements in the agri sector, a more detailed understanding of the financial needs of the population engaged in this sector, including women who are not often counted as part of the formal economy, will be critical in building a more cohesive strategy. And as, again, referring to Dr. Ahmed's presentation, that agricultural sector contributes to poverty eradication or elimination in numerous ways, which is often not direct or linear. The direct contributions are easy to quantify. However, there are many other impacts that seeps through in other sectors. We are really excited to hear about the two projects in very short time. And thanks again for presenting it for us and others. And I'll now hand it over to my colleague, Maria May.
IFPRI team, distinguished guests, good morning. It's an honor to stand before you today at this pivotal workshop on agri-food value chains and farm mechanization in Bangladesh. On behalf of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I want to express our gratitude for the partnerships with the IFPRI team and the Ministry of Agriculture, and for all of you for coming here today to engage on the study findings. The studies we're going to hear about today were motivated by our belief that digital financial services have the potential to move people out of poverty, to improve their resilience, and for women to enable greater agency and control over their income. Providing financial services that truly meet the needs of low-income households begins with gaining a deeper understanding of their livelihoods and how they're currently managing their finances. Today we'll hear about two studies looking at different segments of the agri-food value chains. The first focuses on a population that's often hidden or ignored, the midstream intermediaries in agri-value chains, like traders and wholesalers. These actors engage closely with smallholder farmers and often have a lot of power and influence. They may hold the key to digitizing payments in agriculture, which, despite the incredible trends that Snigdhapa mentioned, in agriculture payments remain very much in cash. On the other hand, many midstream actors are micro-enterprises who, like farmers, struggle to find access to working capital and have limited ways to mitigate economic shocks. They're another type of underserved segment in need of better financial products. IFPRI conducted research on midstream actors in Bangladesh and Uganda, focusing here on the potato and rice value chains. The findings are quite interesting, and especially around the existing patterns of using digital payments. Increasing use of digital payments creates a data trail that can be leveraged for designing and offering credit products at affordable rates, enabling us to address the credit gap that will greatly benefit Bangladesh's agricultural sector, as well as the many families that depend on it for their livelihood. We hope this research inspires private companies and policymakers towards new approaches. The second study will focus on agriculture mechanization policy. The government of Bangladesh has significantly invested in agricultural mechanization and promoted the adoption of agri-technologies to farmers. In response to a request from the Ministry of Agriculture, this research seeks to comprehensively assess the state of mechanization across various crops and geographic regions, quantify the impact of large mechanization subsidy programs, and identify the most effective models for financing machine purchases and rentals. In addition, in light of the government's priorities on climate change and gender equality, the researchers are exploring opportunities to promote climate-smart technologies and machines that support women farmers specifically. The researchers will share key trends in mechanization and their consequences on labor costs and productivity. These successes offer insights into what will be required to ensure all farmers can benefit from available technologies. We'll see that there are still quite a few market failures that need to be addressed to maximize the benefits from the machine subsidy programs and facilitate greater provision of financing by private financial service providers. I'm really excited for the presentations from the IFPRI team and the discussion with many distinguished stakeholders in the room. I'm particularly excited that IFPRI has established the Technical Advisory Committee with the Ministry of Agriculture and believe that this represents a powerful opportunity for research findings to translate into impactful policy. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to learning with you and working together to ensure that the hardworking people supporting Bangladesh's robust agricultural sector have the financial services to support them to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ali and Ms. May, for joining us today. We deeply appreciate your presence and look forward to the valuable contributions you will make to the workshop. Next, it is my privilege to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Kate Ambler, Senior Research Fellow at the International Food Policy Research Institute. Dr. Ambler will provide us with insights into the CGIAR initiative on rethinking food markets.
Sorry.
Good morning. Thanks to everyone for being here. I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about the CGIAR research initiative on rethinking food markets and value chains for inclusion and sustainability. While the two projects that we're going to talk about today have been generously funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we at IFPRI and together with other partners at other CGIAR centers are also conducting related research through this research initiative, which is also co-sponsoring the event today. So this research initiative has grown out of recognizing the following three challenges in the food system. First, that the food sector is the largest source of income and employment, but is often unable to provide decent livelihoods for billions who depend upon it. We also see that rural and urban workers employed in the agri-food sector can be left with few prospects and unable to afford a good and nutritious diet. And we also find that weaknesses and inefficiencies in the value chains can generate poor outcomes for people and the environment. So to address these challenges in the research initiative, we're looking to develop evidence on innovations within value chains that can create incentives and also study policies that can provide effective tools for generating equitable income and business opportunities. The goals of the initiative are fourfold. First is poverty reduction through more employment and better income with a special focus on women and youth. The second is lower emissions in both domestic and global food markets and value chains. The third is to promote affordable and healthy diets for everyone, and especially for the poor and nutritionally vulnerable populations. And finally, to promote lower levels of food loss and waste through improved quality control and logistics in value chains. The work in the initiative is being done in 4 pieces through 4 work packages. First, by looking at how we can make globally integrated value chains more inclusive, efficient, and sustainable. The second studies the inclusive and sustainable growth of domestic value chains. And the third, which is most relevant for the work that we'll talk about here today, looks at innovation and policy design for development of financial and logistics services to leverage income and employment opportunities. And finally, the fourth work package is promoting knowledge tools for policy coherence and market reform to bring together all these learnings from the other research. And all this comes together with a big focus on looking at pilots of bundled innovations, as well as a focus on scalable innovations and leading to scaling preparedness and action. Finally, just to share the countries in which the initiative is working, we're working across Africa, Asia, and Central America, in Ethiopia, Uganda, Nigeria, Bangladesh, Uzbekistan, and Honduras. We have a whole host of partners, including private sector partners, financial startups, seed companies, and university partners, as well as other international organizations. And our work in Bangladesh, to share with you the details of two big projects that we're running through the initiative here in Bangladesh. The first is an evaluation of a profit-sharing financing scheme for livestock fattening in partnership with the company WeGrow. And the second is the evaluation of an intervention in the shrimp value chain that looks at aggregating production and marketing, input to delivery, and promoting traceability. Look forward to sharing the results of these research projects with all of you when they're complete at a later date. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ambler, for your commitment to driving positive change in the agricultural sector. We eagerly anticipate your presentation. Now, it is my privilege to introduce today's guest of honor, Dr. Mohammad Mahmudur Rahman, Joint Secretary, PPC Wing at the Ministry of Agriculture, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, for his special remarks. With a strong commitment to driving agricultural policy reforms and fostering sustainable development, Dr. Rahman plays a pivotal role in advancing the agricultural agenda of Bangladesh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable dignitaries, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and very good morning to you all. I extend my heartfelt appreciation to the organizers, especially the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for bringing us together at this workshop on agri-food value chains and mechanization in Bangladesh. I would like to thank the International Food Policy Research Institute for inviting me on this occasion and extending the opportunity to say a few words before you. Distinguished participants, you are well aware that agriculture sector has been the key driver of Bangladesh economy in any situation. Given the proportionate contribution of this sector in GDP decreases over the years, this sector is still the main source of employment and key to facilitate food and nutrition security in this country. The country has so far been able to withstand global shocks with the development of this sector. However, to ensure food security and food and nutrition security and to promote the diversification in export and other sectors, the sector has a lot more to do in poverty alleviation as well as improvement of and enhancement of our economy. And value chain, promotion of value chain and mechanization would play an important role in this aspect. We have a huge potential, and the agriculture sector can grow at a faster pace if we can improve, if we can introduce farm mechanization as well as mechanization in different stages of value chains. With an about 11% contribution to the nation's GDP and employing approximately 45% of the labor force, the possibilities for deepening the sector's potential and can be significantly increased by emphasizing mechanization. Respected audience, the Ministry of Agriculture has been actively promoting mechanization for addressing productivity challenges against decreasing number of agricultural laborers as well as climate change adversities. You will definitely agree with me that mechanization is closely linked with agricultural value chains in Bangladesh that are complex, involving various stages from production to consumption, against the challenges of fragmented land base, vulnerability to climate change, and the slow pace of technology adoption. The government has taken initiatives, including fertilizer subsidies, extension of extension services, and export incentives for agri-processing industries to strengthen the value chains. However, we need to design agri-food value chains to increase competitive advantage through collaboration with producers, processors, marketers, food service companies, retailers, and supporting groups such as shippers and research groups and suppliers. I believe that full-fledged mechanization in different stages of value chain could be the real game changer through productivity improvement in production, processing, and distribution. I also think that mechanization in Bangladesh would contribute to both the cost advantage and the differentiation advantage perspective that help the sector become sustainable. Distinguished participants, agriculture sector in Bangladesh has undergone a profound transformation, with the mechanization serving as a catalyst for boosting agricultural productivity and enhancing the socio-economic condition of poor farmers. Since the 1980s, collaborative efforts between the government and the private sector have driven advancement in agricultural machinery. The Ministry of Agriculture has although adopted agriculture mechanization policy in 2020 and also developed a time-bound action plan for implementation of this mechanization plan. The strategies for full-fledged implementation of the mechanization policy and its time-bound action plan require policy support and consultation with the real with the ground reality. It has been found that in some studies that the most heavily mechanized areas are land preparation, irrigation, threshing, and pesticide application. The rates of mechanization in planting and harvesting are low, rapidly increasing, but not according to our expectation. I believe that ongoing study of IFPRI will provide us insights on research changes, and the policy recommendation will definitely guide the Ministry of Agriculture take evidence-based policy decisions in realigning the mechanization strategies. Apart from insights on farm mechanization, now we also need to know the rate of mechanization in different stages or segments of processing and distribution. I'm happy to share that Ministry of Agriculture has initiated some tasks for mapping the logistics, including mechanization in processing and distribution. However, that requires technical assistance, and I expect that IFPRI may help the ministry in this regard. Distinguished participants, it's essential that we draw lessons from our experiences and tailor our policies to address the unique challenges of Bangladesh agriculture. IFPRI, as a think tank partner in shaping the agriculture policies in Bangladesh, has always been with us through conducting studies and contributing to policy interventions. Partnership with IFPRI and CGIAR significantly contributed to data-driven policy making that yielded benefits for our farmers as well as for the country. Now Bangladesh is at a pivotal moment in its journey towards broader agricultural mechanization. While we have made notable progresses, unlocking the potential of full-fledged mechanization necessitates focused efforts and collaboration among the government agencies, research bodies, and private sector, as well as the civil society. With thoughtful policy support, targeted mechanization, and resolute determination, we can devise widespread adoption of agricultural mechanization, ensuring a more prosperous future for future generations to come. Ladies and gentlemen, as we convene today, let us begin exploring the pivotal role played by agricultural food value chains in Bangladesh agricultural landscape. These value chains serve as vital conduits, linking farmers to consumers and contributing significantly to the value added produced by our agricultural sector. In Bangladesh, there has been a growing policy focus on targeting intermediary actors with these value chains to enhance efficiency, improve prices for producers, and enhance quality for farmers, for consumers. In closing, let me request the IFPRI to provide us insights for full-fledged mechanization in different stages of value chains, including production, processing, and distribution. We have full confidence in IFPRI, and we are committed to take necessary interventions in alignment with the recommendations that we will receive from the IFPRI study. I expect that through evidence-based policy interventions, we can address the unique challenges in Bangladesh agricultural landscape, and will realize our shared vision of a vibrant, inclusive, and resilient agriculture sectors that remains the cornerstone of our national prosperity. Thank you so much for patient hearing. Joy Bangla, may Bangladesh live forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rahman, for your remarks on the critical issues facing our agricultural sector and for your leadership. At this stage, I welcome Dr. Kate Ambler and Dr. Alan DeBrow, Senior Research Fellows at IFPRI, to give their presentation. Dr. Brow is a Senior Research Fellow in the Markets, Trade, and Institutions Unit at IFPRI and a Fellow of the Global Labor Organization. And Dr. Ambler is a Senior Research Fellow in the Markets, Trade, and Institutions Unit at IFPRI and also an Adjunct Professor at the McCourt School of Public Policy at Georgetown University.
Great, thank you. I turned it off. Thank you, Raisa, guest of honor, Dr. Mohammed Mahadur Rahman, Joint Secretary of the PPC Wing of the Ministry of Agriculture, the Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Distinguished participants, thank you for coming today and for your attention. I'm really pleased to be back in Dhaka to present this research. I can't see you because I had to take off my glasses to read this bit. So I'm sure I see some familiar faces in the room, though, when I put them back on. And I want to thank again the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for their support. I'm going to start this presentation and then turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Kate Ambler, in a few minutes. But really, I want to start by talking about agri-food value chains and the hidden middle. Most studies of the agricultural economy either concern themselves with farmers or producers or consumers and poverty of those consumers. In Bangladesh, these studies have been really important in informing us about patterns which we know have been changing over time. I want to say one other thing quickly before I really get started, and that's that we know that there's been urbanization taking place over the last, say, 20, 30 years, along with the economic growth that Bangladesh has experienced. If we think about those two things in combination, we know that a lot of food has to get into cities because the people in the cities are not producing very much food. Maybe they produce a little bit, but not nearly the amount that they used to produce. And as a result, somehow that food has to get from those farmers to consumers. Well, we say that takes place through agri-food value chains, or what Tom Reardon called the hidden middle, somewhat famously, at least in some circles, about 9 years ago. We note, though, that these intermediaries, these agri-food value chain actors, are a little bit less studied. They remain understudied. So why is that? Well, one is that there's a lack of quality data to understand these intermediary actors. Where studies exist, the samples tend to be small and typically focus on 1 or 2 nodes of value chains. So they might study traders, but only 100 or so at a time, or they might study wholesalers or processors. But again, these studies are quite small. Through this research project, we looked at large publicly available data sets, such as the LSMS ISA in Africa and World Bank Enterprise surveys, and they just tend to be poorly suited for studying agricultural value chains. And so basically what we find we can conclude is that most existing data don't allow for studying what happens between farm and retail. That said, we know that intermediary actors are often vilified in the press and through other means. Just to take an example from a newspaper article here about 6 weeks ago, businessmen said when the price of rice increases by 2 taka at the mill level, people take the opportunity and increase it by 3 or 4 taka coming out the other side. So if you if you mill a lot of rice, if you can make that extra margin, that makes you a lot of money, and that could be what's happening when inflation is rising, when food price inflation is present, I should say, not rising. However, we don't know that it isn't that their costs just increased, right? So it could be it could be they're taking advantage of local market power, or it could be that it's just that their costs are rising. However, we're not going to answer that question, but we're going to suggest ways that one could do so. So we're going to do a study here in documenting the financial needs and constraints among firms engaged within intermediate segments of two agri-food value chains in Bangladesh. We studied the rice and potato value chains, and I think what you'll see is that our samples are they're different than other samples that have been used before, and much larger than other samples that have been used before to study rice and potato value chains. We worked in Bogra and Rangpur, and there's as Maria mentioned, there's a companion study in Uganda that studied Arabica coffee and soy value chains. So why did we choose paddy or rice or potato value chains? Well, we started with a rapid review of 6 different value chains: rice, dairy, mango, potato, shrimp, and tomato. We wanted to select value chains with a potential to be transformed through digital finance or through additional access to finance. We selected rice as an important crop and potato because it has interesting linkages and traceable, potentially digitally traceable transactions. So let me go, before we start looking at the data, I'm going to quickly take us through the data collection and sampling approach. So again, our goal here was not just to sample intermediary actors, but to try to do it in a more systematic fashion than has been done before. And that's a challenge because it's difficult to use traditional sampling when you study agri-food value chains. The actors tend to be informal, they tend to be mobile. There's sometimes a limited knowledge of value chain structure to generate a sampling frame. It depends. Sometimes the value chain structure isn't very well formed. In these cases, it's not badly formed, but that's one challenge. And if we think about it, the value chain takes the form of a network with different actors linked together through the series of transactions that's taking place. So what we decided to do after thinking about it for a long while was to adapt a method that sociologists use to survey hard-to-reach populations. So think AIDS patients in urban Brazil. That's kind of a classic example of a respondent-driven sampling approach. So these people who just might not be as easy to survey as households that we know pretty well how to survey, at least at IFPRI. This approach allowed respondents to inform the path of the interview process. It's a little bit like using a snowball sampling survey process, but it's a bit different in specific ways. And the result of the process is that it allows us to calculate sampling weights to estimate what we think are population parameters. Now, one can debate a little bit how close we get, but that's the gist of what we're trying to do. I want to give you some definitions before we go farther, because we're going to oversimplify what we call people here. We're going to call traders anybody who purchases directly from farmers or other traders before, at least in rice, before paddy gets processed, and for potatoes before they get sold to wholesalers. Processors here in the rice value chain, we don't have processors in the potato value chain in our survey, but they husk and mill the rice. So we're going to call them processors. And then wholesalers are typically aradar or others who purchase rice and then sell to the retail level. So our survey just goes to the wholesale level. These are piker in the potato value chain. So how did our survey work? The logistics are as follows. We started at the farmer level. However, we emphatically want to state we did not collect very much data from farmers. This makes our survey unique, right? And it was really hard for us to keep from collecting a lot of data from farmers because that's what we know how to do. So we used a very simple questionnaire, really meant to seed the sample, really asking them just who they sold their rice or potatoes to. Then we went. Those farmers linked us to a set of traders. So we had the farmers. Now we have a sample frame for traders, and we started to interview the traders who were identified by the farmers, and we asked them where they sold the given commodity. Could be to other traders, could be to processors, could be a bunch of different things. So now we generated another list at the trader level. Sometimes maybe we had already interviewed that person. So we note that we interviewed that person, and we don't go back and interview them again. Sometimes we did, but very few times. And we asked them where they sold the commodity. We get to the processor level. We interviewed processors and identified by the farmers and traders, and asked them then where they sell the commodity after they get through it. And we get to the wholesaler level, and we interview them and end the networking part. So how did this work? Well, it actually worked quite well. Over 95% of respondents provided us with referral links. So not everybody, but almost everybody provided us with referral links. Incidentally, I've tried this from the other end, from the retailer end, back into the value chain, and it works really poorly that way. Really poorly. Not here in Bangladesh, but other countries. On average, the respondents provided us with between 3 and 3.5 referrals. Most of the referrals, again, the majority is the wrong word. Almost all of the referrals had phone numbers, so we were able to find them. And then actually we did find lots of duplicates, as you would expect, because we're building up a sense of how the value chain worked. So over half of the referrals were duplicates. As we basically did this until either we ran out of people to interview or we ran out of time, I guess, in this context. And so I can tell you a little bit about the sample structure, and then Kate's going to start telling you about the data. The average intermediary is male. Actually, almost all of them were male, so that flies in the face of our idea of trying to find ways to help women. We'll have to do that indirectly. They're 45 years old. They have a secondary education, and they own a cell phone, but it's a feature phone, not a smartphone, on average. We ended up with about 1,000, just over 1,000 traders in the rice value chain, 450 processors, and 220 wholesalers. In the potato value chain, again, we had about 1,100 traders. We interviewed 23 cold storage operators and 235 wholesalers. You can ask us about the cold storage in Q&A. I'm just going to mention them now, but there aren't, because there are only 23. There are 23, but there are only 23 both. So we're not going to include them as we go forward. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kate. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan, for that great setup. I now have the privilege of sharing some of the actual data from our survey to talk about the patterns that we identified when we were analyzing all this great data that we collected. So as Alan mentioned, our survey collects information on who each actor has bought and sold from, and this was an important way of collecting the actual sample of the actors in our survey, but at the same time, it provides us really interesting information about what the value chain looks like and its actual structure. So a lot of times when we think about value chains, we have in our head this sort of stylized picture of farmers, traders, processors, wholesalers, and then on down to retailers. But I think, if we just think about it for a minute, we know that in reality, it's a lot more complicated and that there's a lot of different interlinkages. And our data shows that explicitly. So we can show that rice and potato value chains are indeed very complex. Can you put up the slide? Thank you. Rice and potato value chains are indeed very complex. So these graphs shows the buying behavior of the people in our sample. To explain this figure, you can see if we take rice traders, which are the first people there on the vertical axis. This is showing which percentage of rice traders reported buying from the different type of actors. So you can see that 80% of rice traders report buying from farmers, which we see in the blue bar, which is what we would expect. But indeed, there's a lot of traders that report buying from traders who are based in local markets, so local market-based purchases, and a lot of traders, about 30%, who also report buying from other types of mobile traders. So there's a lot of movement back and forth along the value chain. And an important component of our data here is that we allow the actors to self-identify as what was their role. So even though a farmer said, we just said, who did you buy from? And they gave us a name. Then we went to interview that person and said, what is your role? And they told us, I'm a trader, I'm a wholesaler. So we didn't put these people into buckets ourselves. They let us know what their role was, and that has really allowed us to show you a little bit of how these connections work. Moving on from the traders, we see that rice processors themselves buy mostly from traders or from traders that are based in local markets, but a sizable number of processors, about 40%, are indeed buying directly from farmers. We see rice wholesalers, they buy mostly from processors, but they also buy from traders, and some wholesalers even buy directly from farmers. Potato traders act mostly similar to how we see rice traders acting. There's similar patterns with most of them buying from farmers, but then also some other activity buying from other traders. Potato wholesalers buy mostly from traders, but again, a significant portion buy directly from farmers. In the potato value chain, as Alan indicated, we don't interview any processors. Processing in the potato value chain in Bangladesh is only a very small portion, and those are large companies that are based outside of our sample. We can also examine selling behavior. So the prior figure looked at who these actors buy from. So this is the opposite. We ask them, who do they sell to? And so here we see that rice traders sell mostly to other traders. So that's the number one person that they identify as selling to is another trader, so not directly to a processor or to a wholesaler. But there are some, of course, that sell to processors and others who sell to wholesalers. Processors sell largely to wholesalers, but they also sell to traders. Wholesalers sell to other wholesalers and to traders as well. When we look at potatoes, we see that traders sell to other traders and to wholesalers, while wholesalers similarly sell to other wholesalers, traders, and to these traders that are based in markets. So overall, these two figures show that value chains can be much more complex than the sort of simple figure, simple idea we have in our head might indicate, but it also makes imagining the financial atmosphere for these actors a little bit more difficult. Because not only are these relationships complicated, but they vary a lot, right? So any single grain of rice that comes off a farm, no one of those is going to follow the same path. Every farmer makes different decisions about who to sell to, and some farmers might sell to a trader who then goes straight to a processor, but other traders might have relationships with agents and other traders who those grains of rice might take much longer paths to get to the processing point and eventually to a retailer. Now that we've examined what the structure of the value chains look like, we'll now give a sense of what the distribution of the volume handled by each of these types of actors in this case, the rice value chain, just to get a sense of what are the quantities that are flowing through these different actors. And in particular, we wanted to, because we see so many traders selling to traders and wholesalers selling to wholesalers, we understand that there's a great deal of heterogeneity within these different types of actors. So we wanted to split them out into two groups to see these two based on the volume that they handle, to understand like maybe the small rice traders are really very different types of actors than these larger rice traders. And indeed, we see that that's borne out in the amount, at least in the volume, that is flowing through these different actors. So just looking at the distribution of the volume, so these figures, the black line in the middle of these of the rectangles over each type of actor indicate the median value, and then the bottom and the top bar of the rectangle show the 25th and the 75th percentile, with the full line showing the full distribution of the data that we have. So as you can see, for small rice traders, processors, and wholesalers, the distributions are fairly tight. There's not a lot of variation, whereas across the large ones we see, particularly for rice traders, a very large very large range of values of volume that are being traded. We do see that traders are trading in general a larger amount than the processors and the wholesalers. Part of this is due to the fact that the rice, we haven't corrected in these figures for the weight of rice going down as it's processed and milled. So in fact, they're a little bit more comparable than they would look in these figures. We see a similar pattern for potatoes, with a very wide range of business size among the larger actors and a smaller range there among the smaller actors. And just to show that we have a lot of heterogeneity among the people, the actors in our value chain, in terms of the size of their business and the quantity that they are moving. Okay, now that we understand a little bit about the characteristics of what these value chains look like, we're going to look a little bit at something Alan was talking a lot about, and what we sort of think about of one of the most important components of any value chain, which is understanding the value added by these different actors along the value chain. Where does the value come in at these different steps? What are these different actors doing? So here we're looking at basically comparing the price that the actors say they purchase at to the price that the actors say they sell at. And we have collected 3 different types of prices from these actors. We asked them what the lowest price they got in the last 30 days was, what the average price they sold and bought at the last 30 days, and the highest price that they bought and sold at in the last 30 days. We don't actually see much variation among these 3 measures, so I'll just focus on the general trends here. And then we basically just compare those bought and sold measures to see, where is their value being added within the value chain. Keep in mind, this is not referencing profits at all, right? Because we're not taking the costs into account. This is just simply looking at the prices that are paid. So what you can see from this figure is that by far rice processing dwarfs the value added of any other sector in the value chain, which makes sense because you expect processing to really be an area where value gets added. So we can understand these patterns a little bit better. I'm going to take rice processing off the figure for a moment so that we can see the other categories a little bit better. And we're going to split the traders and the wholesalers again into small and large, because we were wondering, well, maybe some of these really large actors, these like large rice traders who often are, sort of get a bad reputation as people who might be, marking up the prices a lot and ripping off the farmers or the larger wholesalers, are they really, adding a lot more onto the prices than the smaller traders? We find that that's not really happening. What we see is, fairly low levels of value added across the traders and the wholesalers in the range of, just about 1 taka per kilogram. And there's not a lot of difference between the small traders and the rice traders. So when we look at the data, we find that to be the case. The prices that they report purchasing and selling at are pretty similar across the sizes of the actors. It's just that the volumes vary. So, even though larger rice traders might be operating with larger volumes, they don't seem to be getting any sort of price benefits for their size. Now we look here at the rice processing, again splitting into small and large. And again, we don't see any real variation between the small rice processors and the larger rice processors, but the value added is, of course, much higher in the range of 15 taka per kilogram. Large processors seem to add slightly more value, but it's not really significantly more. And they're definitely not being able to achieve a price advantage. And you can imagine, right, some of these larger rice processors are really much bigger, more sophisticated mechanized operations compared to some really smaller rice processing centers that you might expect there to be a really great difference, but we don't see that, at least in the prices. However, it's possible, of course, that these larger rice processors might be more profitable overall because their overall cost structures might be more efficient. And recall that rice processing requires a lot more investment than trading, right, due to all the capital outlays for all the equipment and any sort of a lot more additional cost for the processing, as opposed to just the buying, the selling, and perhaps the transporting of goods. Finally, here we're looking at potato traders and wholesalers. And again, we see here that for small potato traders and large potato traders, there's not a large difference in value added. We see just about 1 taka per kilogram, much like in the rice sector. And then for wholesalers, again, we see, it is perhaps slightly more. They're, maybe more like 1.5 or 2 taka per kilogram for potatoes, but we can't definitively say that those small wholesalers are really adding more to the cost than the large ones. In the potato sector, there is the possibility to put potatoes in cold storage, so there is some room perhaps for a price advantage from these wholesalers if they're able to hold on to their potatoes for a longer time and then sell them at a higher price. Okay, so we've now sort of set the stage and understood a lot about the way, hopefully, about the way these different value chains work, and we've learned about their structure and the prices that they're offering. And so now we turn to what was like the core of some of the research questions that we had in this study, which was how to understand a little bit more about their financial access and behavior, right? Because we really want to, there was a lot of unknowns about how these people get credit, how they make payments, and we really want to understand that so that we can eventually, trickle down to the farmer level and really use them to unlock new financial products, even for smallholder farmers. So first we look at their financial access, just by simply asking them if they, not only have, but use accounts at financial institutions, because some people, have bank accounts that remain sort of unused. So we do find, I think this would be in contrast to most smallholder farmers in the area, that these actors have accounts at financial institutions and they report that they use them. So the lowest amount is 70% of rice traders say they use an account, which is still, fairly high. Up to 90% of rice processors say that they have a financial account. So, there's a variation in actors here. There are some like larger businesses, but a lot of these traders are just very, very small and not very necessarily well off people. They're, very like micro enterprises. Without, I don't have the employment figures here, but most of these businesses, don't have any permanent employees and don't, have a lot of staff. They're small, very small and vulnerable people in and of themselves. So turning from the financial access just of the account, we want to also know if they have digital access to that account, because just imagine this population is very mobile. They have to move around to buy and sell the product. Having digital access to their account could be hugely helpful, but we find that in general they are not able to access these accounts digitally. Only about 20%, under 20% for the most part, have digital access. So that shows that there's a long way to go towards really like unlocking digital services through their bank accounts. We were also interested in their use of mobile money and how, even if they may not be using it to make payments, how is it incorporated into their businesses? So first we wanted to know about how accessible banks and mobile money were. So we asked them how much it would cost to reach the nearest bank and how much it might cost to reach the nearest mobile money agent. And we find, as you might expect, mobile money agents are more accessible, right? They across the board report that it costs much less to reach the nearest mobile money agent than it would cost to reach the nearest bank. And this is like quite a large difference in cost. And this is only, just what they would have to pay for transport. It doesn't take into account the value of their time, in going to the bank. So we see mobile money is indeed, has potential because it is much more accessible. However, we turn then to asking them about mobile money use. We ask them if they use mobile money personally to send money and to receive money. And then we also ask them whether they use mobile money at all to facilitate their business transactions in some way. So we see here, I think that this is a really interesting figure because it's arguable whether, I think a lot of people might say these are very low numbers, and some other people might think that they're, this shows that there's a fair amount of mobile money use in the market. So it kind of depends, I think, on what perspective you're coming from and where you think the sort of digital financial environment should be. But we do see that in the rice area, only about 40% of people are really using mobile money, and really more like under 40%, especially for the traders, are using it even for personal purposes. The potato traders and wholesalers, that number's a little bit higher, closer to 60%. Interestingly, this is very different from our data in Uganda, where you see that the people who are almost all of them use mobile money for personal use, although they similarly are not really using it that much for their businesses. So this is a real difference in Bangladesh from in some other contexts. That said, we were also interested in what role mobile money could actually have in facilitating these transactions. So if transactions are always taking place face to face, maybe wouldn't be that useful to introduce digital payments. So we did ask them about whether or not they're making their transactions generally in person or whether they're making them over the phone. And we find that, there's really a huge mix here. There's a lot of transactions occurring in person. There's also a lot of times when transactions are conducted over the phone. Even more so when they're reporting that their selling transactions are occurring over the phone in comparison to their purchasing transactions, which I think for traders that indicates that perhaps they go directly to farmers to make purchases, but then they might be making some of their more onward connections over the phone. So this fact that they're already using the phone to facilitate their businesses suggests that there's a real role to introduce digital payments that could really help facilitate perhaps even more of these more remote transactions and improve efficiency. At the same time, despite the fact that we see these, I think that we've alluded to this over the course of this. Perhaps we should have shown this figure right at the top, but the transactions are overwhelmingly occurring in cash. Okay, so for both the buying transactions on the top and the selling transactions on the bottom, the blue there is transactions in cash, and the green are advance or delayed payments. So those are basically sales and purchases done on credit initially. So we see that is the vast majority of how purchases and sales are made. And then the mobile money is in orange, which almost doesn't show up at all in most of these figures, so it's almost nothing. And then the red is our bank transfers. So there is some role for bank transfers, more so in the potato value chain than in the rice value chain. But so that is a form of digital payment that we see right now that's a little bit more prevalent relative to mobile money. The transaction fees are lower. People might trust it more if they're skeptical about mobile money. So I think that is something to consider. I think for larger actors, it's a little bit more accessible at the moment. But thinking of ways to operationalize easily bank transfers for transactions might be a way to really increase mobile payments. Okay, so finally on the financial side, we'll talk a little bit about credit access and risk management. So just to show about credit, despite the fact that these are, I think they're not small holders where we always worried about their credit access, but they're people for whom credit might be really important. If you think about a trader, they really need liquidity to make their business work, right? They need money, capital to buy goods so that they can sell them. And the same goes for wholesalers and, of course, processors also need credit for goods, for capital, and that sort of thing. So we do see a lot of financial access in these sectors, but it's not 100%. It's more around 50% overall of them that have outstanding loans. But perhaps not all of them had need for credit. So we also ask whether they're always able to get the loans that they needed. And only about 50% of them report that they're always able to access the credit that they need. So this suggests that there is a real still lack of credit available to actors in this sector. So there is still a real need for creative ideas about ways to improve financial access in the midstream of the value chain. Because if we can unlock credit for these traders, you can imagine that could trickle down to farmers, right? So that it can, allow them to offer credit to farmers, which could also improve financial access for the farmers. Turning to risk. Now we know, as people who are interested in agriculture, that risk is a really key problem in agriculture across the world, and particularly for smallholder farmers. We're always worried about, weather risk and that sort of thing, and that's why there's a lot of issues with financing smallholder farmers. But we might not think about it as much in the intermediary space. However, we find that our sample, they report that they face a lot of risk and that it's a big problem. And for them, they report that output price change is the biggest risk that they face. So, they buy something and then the price goes down and then they can no longer sell it at an amount that allows them to make a profit. And they also mention weather, which is what we expect smallholders to say. But this could be weather that directly affects their business, like it might affect their storage facilities, or it could affect transportation. But it could also be referring to, the prices that they're getting from farmers or the supply and quality of the goods that they're purchasing. The other things that they mention are input price changes, access to finance, lack of supply and demand, spoilage, and security. Given this large amount of risk, an interesting thing is that the people in our sample basically report that they do nothing to actively or intentionally manage the risks that they face. So, of course, they're probably always thinking about when the prices are going to change or go up or go down, but they don't do anything that they recognize particularly as managing the risks that they're facing in the market. For those that do say they manage risk, they indicate that they rely on savings. A very small number on diversification, and an even smaller number report that they have access to some kind of insurance product that might provide them with some way to manage their risk. So what we see here, I think, is that there is a whole market here available for someone to develop a really creative insurance products that might help people in this space manage their risk more effectively. Okay, so to begin to conclude our findings here, basically what we've shown you today is that we can see that agri-food value chains are really complex and they have a lot of different interesting relationships and interlinkages. Value added varies considerably within and across the value chains, and that many intermediary actors have limited digital access to their financial accounts, which goes hand in hand with the fact that most of these transactions are conducted in cash. At the same time, we find credit needs are not fully met, and that our intermediary actors are really doing very little to manage the risks that they face. Finally, to conclude with some thoughts on policy, in both value chains, we see concerns in newspapers in Bangladesh and in the public discourse that certain value chain actors are taking high margins. This is what Alan was alluding to at the beginning of our presentation. Especially when prices are rising, the intermediaries are often blamed for high prices. In the rice value chain, policy interventions are often government procurement when prices are low to help protect against low prices, and to import or threaten to import when prices are high. And there's a particular concern about processors being ones who are really increasing the price. Now, it's not really clear from our data whether or not that is happening. We do see a lot of value add, from the processing, but we don't know enough about the cost structure. So there is a lot more, and that is difficult information to get processors and big companies to tell you, right? In the potato value chain, there is also concern that some cold storage operators are charging really high prices. Our data does not suggest that there is a huge markup by the cold storage operators with the data that we have collected, but prices change all the time, right? So again, in our study it's just at one point in time, so there could be a lot of variation. Introducing digital technologies can enhance traceability in these value chains, and so these traceability mechanisms could really, be important, helping us to understand the margins better and to understand what processors need to make a profit. And this could help people understand a little bit better whether or not the intermediary actors are fairly setting prices or not. And these traceability measures could be crafted, could be fostered by well-crafted regulation. Just as we've alluded to over the course of the presentation, indeed, digital technologies have also a lot of other potential to make transactions along the value chain more efficient, to unlock financial access across the value chain, to increase profit margins. But we have been finding, in Bangladesh, that there is still a lot of resistance to their use in these rural areas, and particularly in relationships with farmers. And so hopefully this research is going to lead to the development of some creative solutions to help bring some of those new ideas into the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kate Ambler and Dr. Alan Dubrow. At this stage, please welcome Ms. Isha Jahan, the former Regional Director of the Asia Division at the International Fertilizer Development Center, IFDC. Ms. Jahan has a vast experience in economic and policy assessments of the fertilizer sector.
First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to discuss on the agri-input value chains. My compliments to the presenters, to the lead presenter, Dr. Brown and Dr. Kate and her team members for presenting a very crucial, study which has never taken in Bangladesh as far as my knowledge goes. I'm not sure, but this is for the first time perhaps this sort of study has been taken place in Bangladesh. So I will focus on Bangladesh. You have, in fact, compared with Uganda, the Arabica coffee and soybean products. But these are rice and potato, so I don't want to really compare because the products are totally different. The agri-value chain, in fact, framework for rice and potato encompasses 4 primary activities. One is the commodity production, of course, is the downstream, actor, and then processing, marketing, the intermediary actors, mid-stream actors, and final consumption is the upper stream actors. I will consider as a consumer. So you have focused on the intermediary, actors. Before, going to that part, I would like to just focus something on Bangladesh agriculture in terms of rice and potato. In Bangladesh, the market systems for rice and complementary crops such as potato are in the midst of a dynamic period of change. Farmers, one had inadequate access to information, regarding good agriculture practices. Yet today, paddy yields on many farms are close to those obtained in national research institutions. Farmers are producing much. In some places, I have seen, because I really go across the field myself. I discuss with the farmers. They are really doing very good job in terms. Some of the farmers, attaining good yield of their products. Whereas production was once largely for local consumption earlier, and productivity increases, crop diversification has taken place in Bangladesh, technology adoption, market-based cropping system, decision making, and a commercial farming orientation are increasingly common now in Bangladesh, which is suggesting that a more complex market system is taking shape, honestly speaking. While wholesalers once set market trends, the recent rise of, auto rice mills has emerged as a disruptive force, with increasing investment in mills. That is, I just want to give one example. For example, we buy one product, rice product, which is we call miniket. Miniket is not a variety, honestly speaking, but the millers have given the name miniket. And it is not coming from India, it's not from anywhere. It's a Sharna varieties, which is coming from India. The variety is coming, and when it is going to the millers, they are giving the name as miniket. It's a really interesting market and very complex market, nowadays we are having. While, okay, I have already mentioned about that, investment in mills. Taken together, these advances, while uneven and dispersed, indicate that rice and complementary crop value chains are fundamentally transforming from an inefficient and rudimentary system to one that has far greater potential to serve the needs of smallholder producers effectively and efficiently, processors, market intermediaries, and consumers. I have gone through an Asian Development Bank study regarding the transformation of rice value chain in Bangladesh, and they have identified 7 areas in case of Bangladesh. The first is the rice value chain have began to geographically lengthen and intermediationally shorten. This is the first observation from them. The second is farmers capture about 60% of the final urban retail price of rice. This can be compared to about 23% in 1998 and 37% in 1980 in the United States of America. The third point is that finding the corollary is that about 40% of the value chain, actually this number has increased. This study was taken about 8-9 years back by Asian Development Bank. So I'm sure the marketable surplus has increased for rice crop. So 40% of the value chain is, they have written 40%, but I don't agree now with this. This number has increased. Chain is formed by the post-harvest segments of the rice value chain in milling, trading, and retailing. In fact, the fourth is while much policy debate concentrates on direct government operations in food value chain, such operations were in general quite small in the rice value chain. And IFPRI has done lots of studies in this area. The fifth is the indirect role of government have been important in enabling change and a time in providing incentives for transformation. Sixth, government subsidies had important effects, but the evidence of accessibility to subsidies and the impact of the services were mixed. 7, the study points to the importance of farm input supply chains, upstream from farmers and of midstream and downstream post-harvest activities such as logistics and wholesale milling and retailing, which you have really covered in your study. And I really appreciate, that this study has been taken place both by IFPRI and the Bill Gates Melinda Foundation jointly. I highly appreciate this. This is an important area for us, for not only for rice or potato, also for vegetables. Vegetable is, we really need to focus on vegetables because we are losing lots of vegetables, because it's a perishable item. And we should focus on how we can improve the vegetable markets as well. So in case of potato, the value chain is partnership between producers, processors, and marketers, created to improve quality, increase efficiencies, or develop and market differential products. In fact, potato is being really processed in many ways, potato chips or French fries. Some of the, like companies like Pran, if I consider Pran, there are many other Ruchi. There are many small, processors are now really involved in potato processing. The bottlenecks the sector is facing, relationship and linkage between and among the actors, the flow of products and the change in value and in the information and knowledge flow. The potato production in Bangladesh has marked significant growth over the last few years, despite the fact that in peak seasons, growers face enormous difficulties with their surplus production due to cold storage capacity constraints, leading to unfavorable pricing. This we have, but recently we have faced one problem, that suddenly the price of potato has increased incredibly. We did not even expect that potato price will go such high, despite the fact that we are producing lots of potatoes. So what is really happening in the market? We really looked into those issues. As both crops have reached a level where the role of midstream actors such as traders, processors, wholesalers, and crucial, and IFPRI has been undertaken the study. It's the right time, really. I will say it's very time-bound study. So my compliments again to the team for taking this study. With respect to access to finance, I'm not going to the, all your figures what you have shown. I'm sure, you have also explained about the sampling procedure. You face the difficulties in, getting the, interviewees. So I'm not going to, maybe the audience from, experts are here, they may ask you a question regarding the sampling process. So regarding access to finance is one of the issues you have raised in your presentation. In this connection, I would like to inform you that the bankers, because when farmers are taking loan from banks, from informal, institutions, even from NGOs, the rate of interest is very high. It varies between 25% to 30%. Whereas the banks, if they could get from the banks institutional sources, it's only 8%. So you can see, but the problem is, as you mentioned, actually, the risk of, going to the bank, the cost of, high, it goes really high for, it's not only for intermediaries, it's for the farmers as well. So, yeah. So I would like to inform you that the bankers are reluctant because they don't want to provide the lesser amounts of loans to a vast number of, midstream actors or farmers, because they don't have enough officials to deal, or they have not digitalized or computerized their system so that they can do it very quickly. I mean, farmers are interested. I have seen the input market producers, they are also interested. And of course, you have mentioned about that all the intermediaries, most of them, 80% have accounts. But why they are not getting loans from the banks? The main issue is that. I just want to mention, I had a discussion with few high officials of one bank, although it is named after the farmers, but unfortunately they are reluctant to providing loan directly to the farmers, but engaging few NGOs. They will engage few NGOs through whom they are providing loan to the farmers, So this is resulting in increasing the cost of production, as NGO charge interest between 25 to 30%. This is very hard fact, in fact. And I hope the presenter will take note of this so that the midstream actors can get loan directly from institutional sources, that is, through digital process, or it is possible to take, loan through, digital process, in fact. With regard to digital financing, the volume of loans is a crucial issue. Unless you know the volume of trade, the different segment of the midstream actors are doing, how much volume they are handling, because all the digital, like Bikash, it has a limit that it cannot go beyond such amount. But the large traders, they need a huge amount of loan. So this issue I want to mention. Also, regarding the mobile banking, we have Bangladesh government has in Rajshahi area, you have heard about the Barind, Tract Development Authority. They have successfully implemented the mobile banking system there. And it was a real good model. You can look into that model if you want. Thank you. So I would like to thank you again, the organizers for giving me the opportunity as one of the discussant on an important and time-bound topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Jahan, for sharing your expertise and guiding us through this session. The floor is now open for a questions and answers session that will go on for approximately 15 to 20 minutes. So anybody who has a question to the presenters can go ahead and ask their question. Thank you.
Very good morning to you all. Thank you very much, IFPRI, for organizing such an important workshop. And the study you have made, my gratitude and thanks to Alan Dibro and Dr. Kate Ember for your nice presentation. I have some comments. First of all, it's really a challenge for us at this time to getting better price for farmers. It's really a challenge. The farmers are not getting better prices, and we, the consumer, are paying high prices. As you mentioned in the opening statement that when the prices goes 1 to 2 taka high in the mill gate, then the consumer level it goes 4 to 5 taka. Then we have to find out why the reasons. And the study very clearly mentioned about the 4 levels: farmers level, trader level, processor, and wholesale level. That's good. And I appreciate the issue of the hidden middle, because these are the very important players who are playing very vital role in our agriculture, linking between the farmers and the market, farmers and the wholesaler and the processor. But their part is always negatively criticized, because everybody thought that they are making huge money. But to me, it is not true. They are not getting better prices, because they are just doing some business, doing better for the farmers, for linking to between wholesale and the farmers. Because a farmer producing 5 kilograms of tomato in Ponchogor cannot be in Karan Bazar unless the middlemen are there. But we never think of their troubles. What are the problems they are facing? You see, from a farm to consumer level, the price goes up. There are so many reasons. One of the major reasons to me is the cost of transportation is too high in Bangladesh. From Rangpur or Bogura to bringing any commodities in Dhaka, the cost is too high, the first issue. And the second issue is the hidden cost in transportation is more than the regular cost. That has to be addressed, it's very important. Even in the retail level, the hidden cost is another extra burden for the consumers. That is very important. So we need to address how best we need to introduce good administrative systems so that that can be reduced. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. You mentioned about the mobile money. It's true, farmers and the retailers are using this benefit. But as Ishrad was mentioning, it has a limitation, and to me, the cost is too high. You see 2%. If you go to the bank, it could be 0.001%. So this is another important aspect. The cost for mobile money is too high, so we have to think differently. And Ishrad was mentioning about the agriculture credit. You see, our number of private banks are high in Bangladesh. So 68% of agriculture credit has to be channelized through private banks. Those don't have any branches in the rural areas. That's the major problem. So we have to think differently how best we can use the credit program to the farmers and the retailers. And regarding the hidden middle, I should say, we should bring them in our value chain process. We should recognize them. We should introduce credit facilities for them so that they can do business, because they are the people who are lending money to the farmers in time of necessity. They are buying in advance. They are paying in advance. So they are playing very vital role. Their role should be recognized. They should be in the formal credit system, and they should be trained also technical parts, how best they can handle the farmers also. That's very important. So this is one of my recommendations. And cost of digital money should be reduced to make it more attractive in the farmers level. And my best regards to you, both of you, and thanks to all.
Thank you, Dr. Alan and Dr. Kate, for excellent presentation on value chain analysis. So I have three comments, actually. It's like in India, they have this unified payment interface, the UPIs. There are a lot of service providers as also there, like Google Wallet and several other players also. So how it is different, this mobile money in Bangladesh? Ishrat ma'am has told about this barring the mobile, yeah. So how it is different? Is it same? The other thing is, you have analyzed in your presentation. I have seen that the people who have digital access are less. Have you been able to have a differentiated analysis between those value chain actors who have digital access and without access? So, yeah, I have one more comment. It's also will be good to see the value chain for different production seasons, agricultural production seasons, because we are, yeah. So these are the three comments I have. Thank you.
Before the next question, I would like to request the people who are distinguished guests who are asking the questions to kindly introduce themselves before you ask, so that it's easier for the presenters to answer your queries. And we have 10 minutes more for the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Dr. Anwar Hussain, Principal Scientific Officer from Bangladesh Rice Research Institute. This is very good and nice and informative presentation. You rightly mentioned the 4 actors involved in the value chain process. I have a simple one question about our polishing. You mentioned that there have a major value added in the processor section. because there have a high capital machinery involved in the processing, from pre-cleaning to sorting. That is a huge value of this capital machinery. That is one of the causes. Another causes is that, already mentioned in one of the Israt Jan Madam, all the brie varieties and Sharna varieties, when entered through the processor, by the over polishing, name is changes to the minicate. Because of over polishing, in one way we loses the grain, in another way we loses the nutrition value. Because of this over polishing, milling yield reducing drastically. Generally, 66 to 70% milling yield of the varieties. Because of over polishing, it reduced to 50%, and that's why value is increasing. That is another causes. Do you have any good information regarding this, and any suggestion how to control this over polishing to control the market prices of the rice? Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. This is MD Saiful Islam, CSO, Bangladesh Statistics Institute. My comment is there is an existence of minicate rice in Bangladesh, maybe very minimum around 2%. If you go to Bogra, Nator, Shingra Upazala, where are very low-lying area in Bangladesh, Solonbil, Kumarkhali Kustia, and Joshur, you will find this. But amount is very minimum. We found around 2%, not more than 2%. But process around 35% in the name of minicate, we found it in our study. Second, we suggest government to purchase at least 10% of total produce, just to ensure better price of the farmer, but still not, it is not ensured. Government declare that name of bosta, they will say, equal to name of clean rice. This order has been introduced, so far I know. And from that we hope over polishing or renaming may be minimized after sometimes. My question is, when cost of production increases, but rice of paddy do not increase simultaneously. This is, rice is politics. Many of our consumers prefer lower price, but our producers prefer higher price. There is a contradictory. You know, sir, BRC leaded program, we are included in here. At least 20% profit should be included for the farmers to benefit the farmers. But when we talk to the price fixation level, it is not executed because of high price of price. So we have to share this in our policy level very frequently. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. My name is Imdi Bozlur Rahman. I'm former value chain consultant in the NHV2 projects. Today's workshop is very relevant to me. It is on value chain, rice and potato value chain. Department of Food of the government of Bangladesh is an important stakeholder in terms of buying rice directly from the farmers. It is needed to know that how the Department of Food is fixing price when they are buying rice. They are fixing price considering the opportunity cost against investment of rice farmer or producer. Government should pay, I should say, government should pay at least 5 times more than the opportunity cost. At least 5 times more, even the 10 times more, to sustain the rice farming. And we know rice is our staple food. When the people come together at afternoon or evening, they ask, "Bhat khaiso?" I mean, did you eat rice? So I know so far, I have no data, but I know so far in consultation, informally, with the rice farmer. Rice farmer or producer are decreasing. Number of rice farmers are decreasing. if it is decreased drastically, that will be an alarming situation for this country. Still, we are importing rice from Burma or Thailand, even the Vietnam. Our population is increasing. So we should take an important step on rice to be sustained as a profitable farming. In the rice value chain, still our production is less than China or Japan or even Vietnam, even Thailand. Our average production is 3.18 ton per hectare. Here, the technology could play an important role to increase rice productivity. That should be considered in the rice value chain. Finance is important. Still, I should say the institutional aspects of rice farmers or producer is very weak. No farmer has a very simple business plan on their farms, rice farm or potato farming. Then financial aspects is one of the important aspects in the business plan. If they have a business plan, and they should know how much finance they need to cultivate rice or potato. They should have a plan. They're accessing finance from the bank or from the money lender in the village or from the neighbors or from the family members. And how much they're accessing? They're accessing the real amount or more or less. That should be analyzed in this study. Thank you so much.
If we don't have any more questions, we're happy to briefly respond so far to these great comments from the audience. Okay, here. One more? Yeah. Perfect.
Thank you very much. This is Dr. Srikant Shil, working as valuation expert in FAO Bangladesh. There is a thank you for the presenter. There is a good presentation on valuation report on potato and rice. So importantly, I have seen some points, some issues actually, that the summary findings you have mentioned here in agri-food valuations are complex. Actually, all the valuations are complex, but we have to find out where is the point of complexity. That is the valuation analysis constraint. That should be the underlying. What are the underlying constraint of the valuation? That is the important issue. Thing is that one important point in some technical issues regarding valuation obstacles or very technical issues relevant to post-harvest loss in every case, both of the case, in rice valuation case, both for potato. Potato is a perishable, semi-perishable materials. There is post-harvest loss is too high. And in rice case, there is also very big loss in rice. Particularly, I have some experience in Laos and Myanmar while I worked there. I have seen around 30 to 35% post-harvest loss, including quantitative and qualitative, in rice case. But actually, what are the post-harvest loss analysis methodology, if we apply properly in Bangladesh, the post-harvest loss should be like that. So far my knowledge, actually in Bangladesh, rice post-harvest loss has not been determined yet properly. So if we properly analyze the post-harvest loss, that should be at least 30 to 35% post-harvest loss. But in the policy thoughts, I think there is no inclusion regarding this thing that should be mentioned properly. My suggestion is to give some emphasis on post-harvest loss reduction, how we can do, what should be our policy, what should be the technical issues to make a good solution for this. And actually, in technical issues in production management, post-harvest management, what are the causes of post-harvest loss that is a major constraint of rice and both for potato. That should be incorporated. Then the value chain analysis should be complete. This is my final comment. So another point is that, so you have mentioned that journalist report, that is potato valuation concern, that some cold storage operators charge high prices. This is a Financial Express 2023. Actually, the journalists not analyze any valuation. They are journalists. They are taking some news from the public or something like that. That is their duty. It is the duty of a researcher or valuation analyst to identify what are the causes of taking more money by the cold storage owners. So, what are the costing involved in the valuation, storing of cold store, how to maintain the cost of the cold store, and then how much profit margin they are taking. That is the major issue. So, journalist report, they are taking so much money. This is not the justification for analyzing any valuation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can I
One more, sure. Dr. Talutar, go ahead.
1 minute?
Yeah.
Thank you, the presenters, for a very nice presentation. And I think new ideas in terms of method and also in terms of looking into it have been exemplified through this research. That I must say. But while saying that, I think I differ a bit with Ms. Irshad that such type of research is for the first time in Bangladesh. It's not. Even IFPRI in the 90s, they conducted a study in the name of structure and conduct of rice market in Bangladesh. I clearly recall. So they have adopted some methodology and some good picture. What I think, that type of research should be carried out in Bangladesh, say after every 10 years, to understand the evolution of the markets. I don't know, from your research we can understand that one, the evolution of rice market, structure and conduct of rice and potato market in Bangladesh. From the presentation I did not say anything in that line, first of all. But you have done a very wonderful job. The second point that I like to mention, that even in 2007, when there was fuel and food price high, I recall from Dr. Uttam, your student, he also did a study on why the rice price is going up at that time. And most of the studies, you see, the structure was very clear. You see, I think in this study, the structure of rice market is a bit narrowed down. When we say 4 players, I think we miss some other intermediaries in this scene. See, we cannot. I think that should we do that type of simplification in terms of understanding the structure? When we say traders, in fact, in Bangladesh, traders are, we call it many names in many stages. Some collectors are there, some assimilators are there, some brokers are there. So I don't know, through this simplification, will we be able to understand the whole picture of the structure of rice and potato market in Bangladesh? That is my second point. Third is, you know that in Bangladesh, from policy point of view, you will find when rice market goes up, the government adopts a policy of understanding and exploring the hoarders. In fact, we had Anti-Hoarding Act at some point of time. We have some other Special Power Act to prevent hoarding. But the stocking behavior at a particular point of time among the intermediaries, I think we need to understand that one also. BIDS carried out a study in 2012. You see, they in fact tried to answer the policy question, why the rice market is fluctuating at a certain point of time, and why the policymakers would understand the causes behind it. So they looked at it from different perspective. I think you were Nazdin was so they try to look at it, at the question from different point of view. First of all, from the demand side, from the supply side, also from the data side. You see, we have a peculiar data behavior in our country as well. So we need to understand that one as well. The import behavior, the stocking behavior, and I see not the least that in our presentation, what we saw, that that the buying behavior, if we analyze, we will see that in Bangladesh, a definite behavior has evolved through the contract farming. I think that one is missing in this research. I don't know whether the questions that have been raised, and also the questions that I raised, could be accommodated in your research. Thank you.
Okay, we're running.
May I, because I have to leave here shortly.
Okay.
So I need to, I think, answer 2 or 3 questions that were raised by our participants in respect to basically the rice import and post-harvest losses, what the government is doing in addressing those challenges. So I think we should say something before any audience which has data backup. That is, in respect to rice import, you need to think or see or examine the data that how much rice have been imported to Bangladesh in last few years, because we are self-sufficient in rice production, and we have enough rice at domestic level. So sometimes we import rice in order to establish the markets, but the situation is quite different now. So we have enough rice, and we're not even importing the rice from other countries. And in respect to post-harvest losses and waste, food waste, so the government has been taking serious attention, has been taking serious interventions in order to actually address these specific challenges. So farm mechanization and mechanization in different stages of value chain will definitely reduce the post-harvest and losses. And government is actively engaged with the private sector, and also implementing the different public-private partnership projects in order to promote mechanizations in different stages of value chains, so that the post-harvest losses goes down. But I have some observations, 2 observations specifically about your findings. So you talked about the price hike of potato and also rice in different times. But if you examine the behavior of potato traders in recent times, you'll see the price goes up all on a sudden. And if we issue the order to import potatoes from our neighboring countries, the price goes down in a day. So, but there is an issue, specifically an issue that is, I should say, that the voucher sellers, it's not only the cold storage owners who actually do some businesses during any crisis. So there are some other traders, or I should say the shadow traders, who actually sell the vouchers twice or thrice during any crisis. So and that actually leads the price hike of potato and other products. So you can examine the issues, because we have been conducting some studies about the price hike of potato and also onion, but it's being done by the Policy Support Unit of Agriculture Ministry. So we have found that yes, there are some shadow traders who actually play different roles, and that actually lead to price hike. And in respect to your spoilage, so it's mentioned that for rice and potato in your studies is quite similar, or almost same. So how come that could be? Because rice is not that perishable as the potato is. So I think in your analysis, I think there should be some explanations why the spoilage is quite similar or quite same when we consider rice and potatoes, because there are, the perishability and other problems are different, quite different in respect to rice and potatoes. So I would request you to actually examine those two issues, and I think we have been able to actually answer about the post-harvest losses and food waste issues, and the import of rice. I think that there are some misconceptions among the audiences that we are importing rice, even in some time we are self-sufficient in rice production. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raman. I'm just going to say 2 or 3 very short points so we can, because we're a little over time. One is that I want to say, we ask a lot from our value chains. We want to pay farmers high prices, and we want consumers to pay low prices. And we know that the best way to do to get higher prices for farmers is added value and product differentiation and higher quality, but all of those things mean that consumers would pay higher prices as well, which consumers don't want to pay. So we ask a lot from our value chains, and that's why we want to see them as efficient as possible. And if there is, but we don't know, like if 60%, the producer price being 60% or 70% or 50% of the consumer price is the best we can do. So we're actually working on doing some research about that to the best of our ability right now. A second point I want to say, and that's just separate from this piece of research. Second thing is that I like the idea that the cost of transportation is too high. That's an easy fix for the difference between the producer price and the consumer price. If transportation gets better, it changes a lot of different things, not just producer prices and consumer prices, but it's an easy fix, and it also can do something about the post-harvest losses for perishable products. I'm going to make one last point and maybe leave it there, and then I'll give it to Kate if she wants to say something. But the last point I want to make is that a lot of you pointed out ways that we simplified things in our research. Part of the problem with doing research is that there are all sorts of complexities that you can build in. Here we had the added complexity of working across 2 very, very different countries with very different value chains, and we wanted to be able to do comparable research across those 2 those 2 countries, in part because we want to be able to say something more broad about things about value chains. So of course we make a lot of simplifying assumptions, and that's what I was trying to do with this, where I said, here's what we're going to call traders in our survey, and it gets lost as you go farther and farther as we explain the results, but we had to lump things together. We had to make these simplifying assumptions. Similarly, we lump a lot of different types of varieties together, and we know that. We know there are hundreds of varieties of potatoes, and red potatoes are not the same as fingerling potatoes as Idaho potatoes in the United States, but they're all different, and they have different uses, and we realize we're vastly oversimplifying all of that in our research, but I hope we were able to say something a little bit broader about those actors and those chains that is meaningful in some way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your interest, and I think for us it was mostly just helpful to hear all of your comments on the presentation and learn from your experience. And I will say just 2 things. One is when the mention about mobile money and the costs being so high and that really affecting people. And I think I probably should have said that in my presentation. That's something that we definitely recognize and comes up all the time as a real barrier for people. So that's why I mentioned, I think, these bank transfers that come up as some of the bank payments, because I think that's similar, if I'm not mistaken, to the UPI interface in India. Those things are a lot cheaper, where you can do payments sort of direct bank to bank. And so there's a lot of room for something like that to potentially take off in Bangladesh as people get smartphones and stuff like that. And then I just wanted to say something about, there was a lot of talk about price volatility in both the potato and the rice value chain. And I really appreciated hearing all of those insights. I agree that some of this is like, that was actually a very difficult piece of designing our study and understanding the seasonality of these markets and then sort of the unexpected changes in prices. But because this was really envisioned as a study that was about financial access in the midstream and not quite, a study that was really meant to describe the rice market in Bangladesh, we didn't focus quite as much on those issues. But what was really helpful to us was to hear some more about that today. I think it provides a lot of real important context to our results, and it is indeed a real challenge in measuring these sort of value added and stuff like that when we're living in a world in which prices can be so volatile. And that's, of course, also a real challenge for the midstream actors and the farmers. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ambler and Dr. Rao, for your responses. Now I would like to kindly request all attendees to proceed to the designated area for a short tea and coffee break. It's going to be for about 10 minutes, and we'll reconvene here at 11:45. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back. We will now proceed with our second presentation of the day, focusing on agricultural mechanization, which will be delivered by Dr. Mera Bokhtiar and Dr. Ben Belton, who are both research fellows at IFPRI. Dr. Mera Bokhtiar is a research fellow and a Bangladeshi development economist, and Dr. Belton is also a research fellow at IFPRI and an associate professor at Michigan State University.
Should I start? Okay.
Bhaiya, I think we're good to go, yeah.
Awesome. Great, thank you. Honorable guest of honor, Dr. Mohammad Mahmoud Rahman, Joint Secretary, PPC Wing, Minister of Agriculture, colleagues from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, IFPRI, CGIAR, IFDC, and SEI, and respected participants. Good morning and assalamu alaikum. Asha kori shobai bhalo achen. It is a pleasure and an honor to be able to present at this workshop. My name is Mera Bokhtiar. I'm a research fellow at IFPRI, and I'm the project lead of the Policy Research Initiative on Agricultural Mechanization Research, which is wonderfully supported by the Gates Foundation. For this presentation, in a few minutes, I'll pass along to Dr. Ben Belton, who I've been leading this research with. The research team also includes Dr. Akhtar Ahmed, the Bangladesh country representative of IFPRI, who you have already heard from, Dr. Ruhul Amin Talukdar, Senior Advisor of IFPRI and former Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture, and you'll hear from him shortly, and colleagues from CIMMYT Bangladesh and wonderful analysts from IFPRI. Next slide, please. This research project has been in the making over the last year during IFPRI Director General and senior leadership's visit. In Bangladesh last year, IFPRI received a request from the Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture to carry out policy research on agricultural mechanization and a process evaluation of mechanization support and incentive program to provide feedback on the ongoing farm mechanization through integrated management program specifically. And the idea is to quantify the effect of mechanization in Bangladesh's agricultural sector, assess government's ongoing and previous mechanization support and incentive phases, and overall understand the landscape of agricultural mechanization in Bangladesh. This research project is being supported by the Gates Foundation, as I already mentioned, and our colleagues at the Gates Foundation have been wonderfully receptive of the request from the Ministry of Agriculture. Next slide, please. The overall goal of this policy research is to carry out research on the state of agricultural mechanization in Bangladesh. And some specific objectives of this research include investigate mechanization trends across crops and geographic regions, evaluate current methods of targeting beneficiaries of the government support program, assess the impact of mechanization on farmers, and identify the most effective models for financing machinery procurement for machine service providers and farmers, with a focus on how service provision can be improved for smallholders, and also to understand gendered impact of mechanization and possibly identify machines that are appropriate for female farmers and entrepreneurs. And from the research, the idea is to provide recommendations to policymakers based on these findings. Next slide, please. Upon IFPRI's request, a technical advisory committee, TAC, has been formed at the Ministry of Agriculture, and the inaugural meeting took place recently. We were able to provide the technical advisory committee an overview of the proposed research objectives and methodology, and we also received detailed feedback from the TAC on proposed activities. We plan to coordinate policy research through the TAC and the Agricultural Policy Support Unit, APSU, at the Ministry of Agriculture that IFPRI helped establish. Our collaboration will continue with other CGIAR centers, such as CIMMYT, and we do have representation from CIMMYT, which is really great. Thank you, Owen and Srijit, for coming today. And to briefly, tell you about the research plans, we plan to carry out several quantitative and qualitative surveys, which are planned to be implemented after a few more meetings with the TAC. We plan to have a farmer survey. Around 4,000 farming households in rice, maize, and wheat crops will be covered. And we'll be collecting detailed information on machine ownership, farm size, use and access, production cost, agricultural productivity, profitability, labor allocation, and so on. There will be a separate survey on mechanization service providers or machine service providers. And from there, we plan to collect data on type, cost, and quality of services, area coverage, operational profitability, business models, and so on. Next slide, please. IFPRI and CGIAR centers, such as CIMMYT, have a long-standing research portfolio on policy research and ag mechanization. Influential work in Africa and Asia have been carried out by IFPRI researchers, such as Hiro Takashima and Xiaobu Zhang. Dr. Belton, who will be presenting shortly, has recently completed an assessment of agricultural mechanization in Myanmar. We hope to synthesize learnings from other countries and other contexts, which hopefully will strengthen the findings of this research. Next slide, please. Great, so I think today, Ben essentially will be discussing the results from our ongoing research that we have done based on the data from the last decade. And from the data that we'll collect, hopefully in the coming months, we'll be able to augment the findings from what you'll be seeing soon. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ben.
Okay, thank you very much, Merab, for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. I'm going to be talking in the rest of the presentation about IFPRI's ongoing work on agricultural mechanization. And just to give you the context on that, as Dr. Akhtar has already explained in his introductory presentation, there's been a long-run decline in the share of the population employed in agriculture. So this is represented by the red line here on this graph. So from between 2005 to 2022, the share of the population employed in agriculture declined from around half to a little under 40%. And so rural labor markets are becoming tighter, labor is becoming scarcer, and agricultural wages have increased steadily. So this is represented by the blue line, which is the index of real agricultural wages in Bangladesh for the period 2010 to 2022. And you can see that the real agricultural wage pretty much doubled over that period. So that's good news for agricultural laborers, but it puts pressure on the profitability of agriculture, and it also means it's harder to find workers in a timely manner when they're needed. So that's the background to why mechanization and mechanization research is so important for agriculture and agricultural policy in Bangladesh. So in terms of that mechanization and policy evolution over time, we can look at roughly 3 periods from independence up to the present. So from independence to around 1990, the main thrust of mechanization was through irrigation. So with the liberalization of input markets, the reduction of import tariffs on machinery, we started to see pump sets and engines being imported along with spare parts, and the emergence of repair shops and the widespread use of mechanized irrigation during this period, helping to increase cropping intensity. Then from the 1990s to mid-2000s, the next sort of wave of mechanization was in land preparation, particularly with the import of power tillers. So those became duty-free from the mid-90s. We saw a flourishing of small metal workshops providing spare parts and repairs, and also a flourishing of the machine rental services market. So as farmers purchased these machines, they began to rent out the services to other neighboring farmers, and allowing the uptake of mechanized tillage to really become very widespread. And then from around the mid-2000s up to the present, the main sort of trend in mechanization has been the adoption of mechanized threshing. And since 2005, we've seen sort of increased targeted government incentives and support for the purchase of particular types of machinery, including combine harvesters and transplanters, which we'll hear more about in the presentation. And special consideration has been given to accelerating mechanization in areas that are lagging behind. So as you can see from this map here, the degree of mechanization is quite uneven across the country. So this map is using data taken from the Bangladesh Agricultural Census of 2019. And it's the density of machine ownership per 1,000 farm households. And so you can see that in the west and the northwest of the country, we have areas of relatively higher ownership and use of machines. And then in the coastal belt and in the Howrah region in the northeast, relatively lower levels of machine ownership and use. And so it's these coastal areas and the Howrah Basin that has been particularly targeted by the most recent agricultural mechanization policy, trying to accelerate adoption there. So if we look at sort of mechanization policy since 2005, there have been sort of 3 phases that we can point to. In the first phase, there was a 30% incentive or price support introduced for the purchase of threshers, reapers, sprayers, power tillers, and some other pieces of equipment. And then from 2012 to 2019, the level of price support increased, again targeting threshers, reapers, sprayers, but now also combine harvesters and rice transplanters. So up to a 70% sort of level of price support for buying these machines in the coastal and Howrah areas, and 50% for the rest of the country. And that level of support has continued from 2019 up to the present. Again, for threshers, reapers, sprayers, combine harvesters, rice transplanters, and a range of other new pieces of agricultural machinery. And since 2019, the scale of that scheme has really expanded. And so this is one of the government's largest programs in the agricultural sector, is now supporting mechanization. So again, taking data from the Bangladesh Agricultural Census from 2008 and 2019, you can see that there's been a big increase relatively in the ownership of all different kinds of machines, tractors, power tillers, threshers, pumps, and so on. But it's an increase from a very low base. So in 2019, about 2% of farming households owned a power tiller, about 2% owned a thresher, about 4% own a power pump. So if we look at, if we plot the probability of owning a machine against the area of land owned, we can see that between 2008 and 2019, the probability of owning a machine if you're a small farmer increased somewhat, but the probability of owning a machine is much higher for farmers with more land. So really few, low probability of owning a machine for households that have less than 2 acres of land. And so the implication of all that is that actually the vast majority of farmers who are using machines are doing so accessing them through rental markets, as you can see from this graph. So this is taken from IFPRI's Bangladesh Integrated Household Survey for 2018. So this is a nationally representative survey for rural Bangladesh. And you can see here, for instance, that 98% of rice farming households who used a tractor did so by renting, 95% of those who used a power tiller, 94% of those who used a thresher, around 85% of those who used a pump. So rental markets are really absolutely essential for enabling farmers to access these machines. So this data here is also from the BHAS for 2011, 15, and 18. And there's really two key trends in this graph. The first thing to note is that the percentage of rice farming households using a machine for land preparation, for irrigation, for crop spraying, and for threshing is very high by 2018. So virtually all farmers using a machine for land preparation, 88% of farmers using a machine for threshing, for instance. The other thing to note is that between 2011 and 18, there was quite a large increase in the share of farmers using machines for crop spraying and for threshing. So an increase from about 2/3 of farmers using a mechanized thresher up to 88%. And so that's the most significant change taking place during this period. So we ran some regressions using this data, and we haven't presented the very detailed tables here, but here are some of the headline results. So we find that for threshing, there's a small but significant yield gain associated with farmers using a thresher, and we put that down to reduced loss of grains when threshing rather than with a machine rather than manually. There's also a small but significant labor saving associated with threshing, and then as a result, a significant increase in labor productivity in terms of kilograms of rice per day of labor expended. However, we don't see any change or increase in the profitability of farming when using a thresher. And so it seems that the cost of renting a threshing machine may actually offset the labor savings and possible yield increases. For other machines, particularly thinking here about power tillers and tractors, we don't see any yield improvements, any labor savings or any profitability gains associated with mechanized land preparation over that period. But that's probably to be expected because actually we have very high levels of mechanization even in 2011 for land preparation, and we wouldn't necessarily expect to see productivity gains. And so really, I think a large part of the rationale for farmers using these machines, both for land preparation and threshing, is actually to do with convenience, speed, and avoiding the drudgery associated with this very hard work. And so that's a part of these machines' appeal that we shouldn't overlook. It's not only about labor savings. So we've already seen that wage rates, real wage rates, have been going up over time. But at the same time, over this survey period between 2011 and 18, real prices of paddy were declining. So from, this is again based on the BIHS, and you can see that there was a 16% increase in real reported wages from 2011 to 15, another 12% increase from 2015 to 18, and that equates to a 30% increase in the real wage rate over the survey period. And we have almost the opposite for the price of paddy, a 29% reduction in the real price of paddy over that period. And so, as you might expect, there's a really substantial decline in the profitability of paddy cultivation over that time. This graph here is showing the real gross margin. So gross margin being the value of production minus the production costs. And it's at constant 2011 prices, so adjusting for inflation. And you can see that the gross margin fell from over 17,000 taka per acre in 2011 to around 7,000 taka per acre in 2018. Then the net margin is the same, but it also takes into account the value of family labor. So we've imputed the cost of family labor here, and so you can see that the real net margin fell from around 10,000 taka per acre in 2011 actually to negative 800 taka per hectare in 2018. So a real sort of long-term erosion in the profitability of paddy cultivation. But if we look at which tasks are most labor intensive, you can see it's actually the least labor intensive tasks that are already the most heavily mechanized. So tillage, fertilizer application, irrigation, crop spraying, threshing, don't actually use that much labor, but it's these tasks that are already very heavily mechanized. By far the most labor is expended on planting and harvesting, and these are the tasks that are least mechanized. So here you can see that the share of rice farmers using a machine for planting, so a rice transplanter or a seeder, was 0.1% in almost all of the survey years. And the share of rice farmers using a machine for harvesting, so a combine harvester or a reaper, increased, but only to 0.9%. So still in 2018, less than 1% of rice farmers using a machine for harvesting. So that's important given that those two tasks demand the most labor out of all of the agricultural tasks. However, this is data from 2018, so this is before the most recent expanded phase of the government's agricultural mechanization support program. And we know from being in the field, from observing and from talking with our colleagues in government in CIMIT, that there has been quite a lot of movement since that time. And so as you can see here illustrated by this photograph from CIMIT, we have rice transplanters in operation in some places. We also have quite rapid expansion of the use of combine harvesters in some areas as well. So sort of based on our initial qualitative scoping research, we've identified some emerging policy considerations. So a key point really here to reiterate is that the rental market is absolutely the key for smallholders accessing agricultural machinery. But these larger machines, combine harvesters, rice transplanters, are a lot more expensive than the small machines that are already widely adopted and widely available through rental services. As we've already heard in the previous presentation, banks can be hesitant to provide loans because they have a limited rural presence, because farmers who might be wanting to buy these machines very often lack a formal credit history. And there may also be a lack of the understanding of the viability of the rental services business, a lack of information on how profitable these businesses can be, and business plans and so on. So this means because banks are not providing credit typically for these machines, machinery importers, or in some cases manufacturers, are having to extend credit to potential buyers, but they have limited capacity to do that. They're expensive machines, so there's a limit to how much credit they can provide. Also, sometimes they have difficulty obtaining credit themselves, particularly in the case of manufacturers. Another important point to note is that the current mechanization policy, which is offering price support to buyers of machines, prohibits the transfer of the ownership of those machines. So if a bank were to offer credit to purchase those machines and the person buying the machine were to default, the bank would not then be able to take possession of the machine. It's notable that in Bangladesh there are no hire purchase loan schemes from banks for the purchase of agricultural machinery, such as are common in other countries. So in many other countries in the region, if a person wants to buy a piece of agricultural machinery, they can arrange a loan from a bank where they pay a down payment and then they pay regular repayments over the course of a couple of years, say, until they've paid off the cost of the machine and the machine becomes theirs. This is, in much the same way as you might buy a car on hire purchase. But this facility is not available at the moment for the purchase of agricultural machines in Bangladesh. There are also some challenges with accessing spare parts and maintenance for these more sophisticated machines, and a lack of skilled operators, mechanics, training for the operation and maintenance of these more sophisticated, complex, large machines. And there are a number of important knowledge gaps also that we identify. So we understand that there's been an increase in the adoption of particularly these combine harvesters and planters to some extent since 2018, but we don't have a good understanding of the extent of that adoption in terms of numbers of machines, geographical distribution, numbers of farmers accessing them. And then we don't understand either very well the impacts of that adoption. So how does the use of rice transplanters, for instance, affect yields? How does the use of combine harvesters affect profitability? How does their use affect allocation of labor, both on the farm and off the farm? What are the gender dimensions of that reallocation of labor for family members, for hired labor? Who is benefiting from this? Who is being displaced by this, potentially? And then what are the implications also for ability to adapt to climate change? Does using machines for harvesting, for instance, mean that farmers can get the cropping quicker and avoid risk from weather? There's also a lot that's not known about the financial viability of these rental service provision arrangements, and also the barriers that may be preventing effective operation of or provision of these services. We don't know also how well the incentives for machine purchases have been targeted, and what scope there is for improvements. And then finally, more work is needed to understand better models for financing the purchases of these machines and perhaps also the rental services themselves. So to conclude, we've seen that there's a long-run decline in the profitability of farming in Bangladesh, or certainly paddy farming, due to the tightening of the rural labour market and declining cereal prices, at least up to 2022. There has been already high levels of mechanisation in irrigation, land preparation and threshing, and so there's limited scope for any further productivity gains or cost savings for those particular tasks. However, there's a lot of potential to reduce labour constraints through the mechanisation of harvesting and planting, and potentially also to improve productivity, to free up labour and maybe to reduce production costs. However, the extent of the adoption of these machines is not yet well understood, neither are the impacts of the adoption of these machines or the constraints to adoption. And so the next phase of the research that we're in the process of planning and taking feedback on from the Technical Advisory Committee is aimed to provide some of the answers to this that will inform policy choices that can help to more effectively accelerate this adoption of these machines. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mira Bukhtiar and Dr. Ben Belton, for your enlightening presentation on agricultural mechanization. Your expertise and insights have provided valuable perspectives on the crucial aspect of agricultural development. Now, we're privileged to have with us Dr. Ruhul Amin Talukdar, Senior Policy Advisor at IFPRI and former Additional Secretary at the Ministry of Agriculture, who will moderate the discussion on mechanization presentation. Dr. Talukdar is a distinguished expert in the field of food security, policy analysis, representing the esteemed Ministry of Food in Bangladesh. He has a profound understanding of governance, institutional development, food systems, markets and trade, nutrition, food safety, as well as emergencies and resilience. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. Talukdar.
Thank you, Ms. Shama and the IFPRI team, the research team, and also the delegates from B&G and distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. I think Shama has correctly defined my role. Although it was proposed in the agenda that I will be a discussant, rather I think I should moderate because I am also part of the team. But definitely, you know that we have a wealth of experience in this room this afternoon. We have the former Planning Commission member and also distinguished Vice Chancellor of Agriculture University amongst us. We have the former Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, and we have former Vice Chancellor in another university. He was also connected in research, in policy research for long. We have our colleagues from different ministries and agencies in the Ministry of Agriculture, and also from the development partners, from IFAD, from World Bank, from EU and others. So we'll be happy to listen from you. I think you have understood that this is a very promising area of research, policy research, because mechanization has a definite background through which it has been evolving. In the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, and after 2005. I think Dr. Belton has shed some light on the phases, how mechanization has evolved. And in fact, as we are in the process of literature review and designing the study, and fine-tuning the objectives and outcomes of the study as well, I think this discussion will help us in shaping our research design as well as our thoughts and our focuses on which and also how to accomplish those focuses with the instruments, with the sample frame, with the method of research. What I think that when we identify the evolution of agriculture, mechanization, and policy, we need to embark on 3-4 things. First of all, how the tax regime has evolved over the years, right from the beginning of the after the independence to till now. How the financing instruments, financing mechanism, or financing incentives, or the financing programs by the Bangladesh Bank and other banks have evolved. How the participation have been encouraged by the private sector since the liberalization that started in 1980s. How the regulatory regime in terms of standardization of machines have evolved. I think we need to understand those when we define the phases of mechanization in our country. In the in the South, I think what the research team have done so far, that with the help of the data from agriculture census and the BIS's data, Bangladesh Integrated Household Survey, that is a panel data initiative by IFPRI, and widely lauded initiative. But when it comes to mechanization, the question of mechanization, how this, although we are saying that it is a very nationally representative survey, but how these survey modules or instruments are sensitive or responsive to the questions related to mechanization, that we have to think of. I think as I am part of the research team, we will definitely think of and try and understand what necessary additions have to be made to the instruments and the approach in order to understand the mechanization process more through this approach. On the in fact, if we think that what treatment are required to the samples, what treatment are required for the instruments per se, what treatment, so that it will be more representative towards the questions of mechanization that we are considering. And we need to, in terms of, although we are saying that through the BISS, we have analyzed the evolution of use of machines in different stages of production, tillage, irrigation, spraying, and threshing. In fact, while working in the Ministry of Agriculture, we had different picture presented from Bangladesh Agriculture University. Say for example, when you say threshing prevalence is around 88% at this point of time in 2018. I remember a presentation from Dr. Manjur that he told, and also a presentation from Dr. Anwar also, that the coverage of use of machines vary through what I saw from their research. So we need to understand these differences, why the differences are happening. I think the findings so far from the data from BISS and agriculture census, that no yield, labor, and profitability gains from mechanized land preparation over the survey period. You have, I think that is a useful findings. But in the end, Dr. Belton has also mentioned that maybe this is the cause of this insensitivity of mechanization towards yield, productivity, and income. Maybe that for the transplanting and harvesting, the rate of mechanization is very low. The prevalence and coverage of mechanization is very low. So with the inception of the new phase of support by the government, you know that government at this point of time is supporting mechanization through a very big project as compared to the previous initiatives. I think with this research, we will be able to identify the impact very well. Now, I think Dr. Belton, during his presentation, he has identified the policy considerations very well, but I think we need to cover the utilization of machines that have been provided by the government. Not only that we will evaluate the process through which these machines have been provided, and the incentive mechanism, and also the targeting mechanism is definitely within the purview of our research, but we need to see the utilization of machines and the scale and the appropriateness. You know that we also discussed about it in the technical advisory committee, that we need to advise the government about the size of the appropriate size of the machines that needs to be adopted in the context, in our context, seeing our fragmentation of land and the ability or affordability of the farmers, the distribution of the farmlands. So we need to see suggest about the appropriate size of machines that are needed in every stages of the production. So with this, and also we need to see the digitalization gap in mechanization. I think that is very required if we refer to the discussion in the morning session. That we need to look into, and we need to see whether what are the constraints of mechanization, the horticulture. Although our scope is on the field crops, we need to see what are the constraints and the promise and potentials of mechanization in the horticulture sector as well. So with these few notes, I think we need to hear from the audience, respected audience. As I said, we have a wealth of experience before us. So the floor is open now, and we would really appreciate your suggestions, questions, or comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again. Thank you very much, Dr. Mehrab and Dr. Belton, for your nice presentation. But my first question about the presentation, the time duration you have mentioned in the presentation is very important. You mentioned about that from 1970 to 90, then 90 to 2005, and 2005 to 18. But what the term mechanization we are using at this moment is the aggressiveness of the present government, what we started from 2010, the incentive program. And the very recent data are the important issues, because the impact of using harvester we have seen after 18, you see, in 19 and 20 during the COVID time, and harvesting the rice in the our areas where 100% is the first time we will be able to achieve, only because of the mechanization. So that data, absence of data during 19, 20, 21, and 22 or 23 would be of a negative impact. It will not give you a proper result of what we are achieving, number one issue. Number two, you mentioned about 1990 to 2005, but I think the period should be better if you start from 2010, another phase, because the aggressiveness of the present government. The government has so far implemented 2 projects, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, and now the third phase is going on with the incentive programs. So if you can divide this 3 period, with the incentive and without incentive, that could be a better result, number one. Number two, in the initial incentive program, in 2010, the machines were different. Government started with tractor, power tiller, harvester, thresher, and also a reaper, etc. But in your presentation, tractor were not there. But later on, government came out from tractor and power tiller. Now we are pressing on harvester and transplanter very much. That's important. This is about the findings. And important aspect for me about the mechanization, you mentioned about your recommendation. I do agree most of you. But the present problem with the mechanization is you see, the price of the machine is going up with the dollar devaluation of the currency. So will it be possible for a farmer to buy a machine at this moment, whether it is 50, 60% incentive? That is a very crucial question, because the, as you mentioned in your presentation, the real value of rice is going down. So why should a farmer buy a harvester with 30 lakhs taka? What's the use of it? For using only for 10, 15 or 20 days or 30 days? So we should have to think of differently how best we can use these machines. We have been arguing so a long time that we should create a service provider group, youth group, so that they can use the machine for the farmers on rental basis. That could be a good use. But again, the problem with the ministry, the agreement in the documentation was done that a machine buy for XYZ or any farmer, he could not go for bank for another further loan or mortgage. That's a problem. That's why most of the machine are not effectively using. Banks are ready to support the mechanization program, but they cannot because of the policy issues. So that we need to address how best we can use the machines for the people, because banks are ready to support. You see, some of the companies, they have invested huge, and they are not able to get money from the government because of the budget crisis. So then again creates a problem for the private companies to expand the business. Banks should to come forward, but banks are not coming forward because of the agreemental issues. That need to be addressed, I think it's very important. And you also mentioned the after-sales service and the machineries. That's very important because it is very new in our country with this harvester. Only 10 years of experience. So we need to train more. We need to develop more people in this sector. That's very important. And cost of important subsidies, that's important. So that's all at this moment from my side. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you very much for your question. If you could kindly tell us your name and designation, we could.
Okay, sorry. This is Anwar Farooq, former Secretary Agriculture.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chairman. Sir, you want to speak earlier? No, please. Okay, thank you, sir. I would like to thank this is Monwar Karim Khan. Basically, I was a scientist of Bangladesh Institute of Nuclear Agriculture. 3 years back, I retired from there, and now I'm working for Krishi Gobeshona Foundation as a specialist. I'd like to thank Ben Belton for his meticulous presentation. But I have some queries, like, if we look at slide 22, in the slides you've mentioned that the planting machineries reduced to 0.1% from 0.2% during 2015 to 2018. That means planting machineries reduced 50%. I wonder about the volume of your data. Why this reduced to 15%? I don't think that it has been reduced to 15%. One thing. If it is really reduced, why? And what is the volume of your data? Number one. Number two, in your conclusion, you mentioned during 2022, the price of cereal declined. The market doesn't say like this. If you say see the conclusion, the last slide, slide 23, in the second line, you mentioned that declining cereal prices. So I don't think that the price of cereal declined during 2022. So how did you calculate it? I need your clarification. Now, come to some points which I'd like to mention that may be considered. Machineries are widely being used by the farmers nowadays, and they are interested to use. But the main constraint is it is used only for certain period, and rest, the whole period of the year, it remains idle. Sometimes it becomes rusted, and next year it cannot be used. So people become disinterested. Using for few months, buying a machine for spending so big amount and keeping it idle and cannot be used for some other purpose, that should be thought. If they can use for some other purposes, suppose when they use the power tiller for plowing the lands, then they use it also in other purposes, carrying their goods, even sometimes I saw them, people are going to one place to another place by a cart where they use a machine. So they're using other places, even in the plyboards, they're using in different ways. Anyway, but the combined harvester and other big machineries, they cannot use in other purpose, just for one purpose. So we have to think of how it can be utilized in some other purposes, or it can be used for more period of time, one thing. Second thing, if you see burro rice cultivation, it is mainly cultivated in the Haur areas. Well, during the monsoon, the Haur is full of water. And with the passing of time, the water recesses and people start growing from the upper basin to the lower basin. In those areas, there is no road at all. And they cannot use the combine harvested in those areas. So those areas, road is a vital factor. We have thought about those. If you want to go for using combine harvester or big equipment in the Haur areas. And third is, you have also mentioned the lack of knowledge. Actually, it is true. Most of the farmers have little knowledge or don't have knowledge at all to use the machineries. There are some local service provider who helps them to fix the machines or sometimes to run the machines. In that case, we have to have more local service providers and more experts so that they can fix it when they face some troubles. Those are the salient points you have to consider to spread mechanization. My last point is we have to go for mechanization. There is no other alternative than this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think it would be useful if we can suggest some ways how to improve the design of the research, because we are yet to research it, So I think we will have time in terms of recommending on the policy issues, but we are yet to research on. We are in the process of research. So thank you.
This is Y. Scobie. I am former chairman BRC. In fact, I was rather willing to listen about the government's intervention of investment projects through Department of Agricultural Extension. They have been supporting mechanization through different projects. It's not the project of 3,000 crore taka. There are many projects, not under the name of mechanization, but they have some embedded support for machines. So what really I wanted to listen the learning of the project intervention that has been taking place even today. What are the learnings that really made us to go forward with mechanization program. It's not the subsidy that this project is providing, but also it has some support to build the capacity of mechanization in the country. So, for example, mechanic development of mechanic in the country, network of service centers, and some other auxiliary support in the mechanization. While having this evolution of agricultural mechanization policy, I see the adoption of mechanized irrigation 70 until 90. But possibly we have ignored the first initiation of mechanization in Bangladesh through BADC, which has a mechanized cultivation program which made this country quite capable of supporting the machine running through number of mechanic. After the closing of this project, these mechanics all disappeared from the field and they took other provision. Possibly this should be recognized, but again the Badi and Biri, it also developed number of reapers and threshers out of a regional network of agricultural mechanization through UN ESCAP. So this should be recognized that because these are the foundation of mechanization program of the country. While talking about the sprinkler irrigation set in 2005 to 2012, I still doubt whether this is true because sprinkler has been in practice in the tea garden only. While seeing this map, I see the density of mechanization in the coastal zone is lesser, while we have the support of subsidy in the coastal zone. So this should be further looked into so that we are adequately guided and our project should be well supported through the research that has been taken up by the IFPRI. Possibly what I see about the machines and machine ownership, I see power tiller, tractor, thresher and power pump, but I haven't seen anything about the harvester, more particularly combined harvester, which possibly the newer arrival in our mechanization program. So we need to learn about this harvester, whether it's combined harvester or reaper. So what are the lessons we learned from that? Possibly I stop here because I should not go too far about that.
Thank you, Dr. Y.S. Kabir, for
Yes.
your
Thank you.
very good points.
My name is Sadiq Jamil. I'm the managing director of Metal, one is a private sector company. We are engaged in agri-machinery business, especially agriculture tractor and combine harvester. Actually, one comment is that for buying agri-machinery, the access to finance for buying this machinery is not available in Bangladesh. We are the distributor in the private sector. We are giving credit to the farmer or the entrepreneur, whatever you say. So if this finance is not available, then I think in future it will be a real problem. This is one. Number two, one subsidy program is going, this 3,200 crore Dhaka subsidy program, which starts June 20, and it will finish next year, June 25. So after that, if this subsidy program don't continue, then that will be a very, disaster, because we know the combined harvester is a huge 30 lakh, 32 lakh taka. That 30 lakh taka, the farmer or entrepreneur cannot buy. Even the government is giving 50% subsidy in whole Bangladesh and 70% in the our area. That rest 50% also as distributor, we are giving credit. And it's really difficult for us. And so my request is from this, whether we can push our ministry that this access to finance, what I said, and then the subsidy program should continue. And one more comment, in Bangladesh, the way the mechanization is going, in the private sector, it's a correct way. Initially, Bangladesh, as our sir said, BADC, BRDB tried, the government should mechanize, but then later it is shifted, and we, the private sector, we are doing this one. And we saw in Africa, some country like Ethiopia, we went with Satan Mandal Sar. We saw the government is giving mechanization service, but in Bangladesh, it is with the private sector. I think this is the how it should be.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sir, can I say, sir?
এখানে একটু বলুন, আপনি বলবেন স্যার?
Thank you. I will go direct to the slide number 9. You have mentioned that evolution of government support for agriculture mechanization, 2005 to present. If you go to the middle phase, 2012 and 2019, you mention about reaper, combined harvester, rice transplanter. Okay? Then what is the progress in slide 13? You have not brought that aspect. I mean, how many reaper or combined harvester and rice transplanter are in use. This is one question because you have mentioned that these are the 3 machines which is really improving productivity of agriculture and saving labor among all the machines.
I think we got your point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Abul Bayas.
One more question, just one more issue regarding the hire purchase loans via banks. This is very important. During mid-19th, if Mr. Jamil remembers, we arranged IFDC through this one USAID funded project. We develop a modality how to, sell tractor to the farmers through this, hire banking system. And there was no subsidy. And that sale of tractor really boomed up during that period, mid-90s. So you can look into that modality with Metal has, I'm sure, that. And also IFDC can also provide us. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Abul Bayas.
Thank you very much. I am Abdul Bayes. I have no affiliation, retired professor. I have just one observation. First of all, thank you very much for an excellent presentation and also enriching our knowledge, because we said that we have mechanized a lot, but now I find that, it is only in land preparation and tillage and threshing. Right. I miss in your presentation one thing, and I would suggest that you should incorporate in your research method. We should have in our mind that the farmers in Bangladesh are now poor farmers. The knowledgeable ones are not in crop cultivation, right? So the small marginal farmers, they would go for purchasing this lumpy investment. They would go for this lumpy investment. How could they access the funds for those finance, right? The agricultural bank in Bangladesh, Krishi Bank, is for large farmers, middle farmers, not for small and marginal farmers. These small and marginal farmers borrow from NGOs. So you should target the small farmers, marginal farmers. How can they access finance for these lumpy investment? And also the in earlier days when they used pumps, irrigation pumps, it was easier because it has a lot of alternative uses. They could use it in crop cultivation, in borboti, then in some other purposes. So they could access it, somehow managing funds. But I think that you should address the marginal and small farmers in mechanized cultivation. And you should design your research in that way. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir, can I say now? This is Dr. Mohammad Irshadul Haq. Thank you very much for giving chance. I want to thanks Mr. Belton for improving your presentation that day on Ministry of Agriculture. But I want to propose to add some more things in your goal, research goal. Could you please highlight on intelligent exit strategy of this mechanization intervention that's come from the government? Actually, after the June 2025, this subsidy program will finish. Bari and Viri related two mechanization project will close. And as so far I know, a big initiative from USAID run by CIMIT will also close on that days. So what will be the intelligent exit strategy, or what will be the continuation recommendation to achieve 4 IR research mechanization target? So if you could add on your research goal. And I want to request for the implementation of your research, you could include not only the mechanization program of DAE, but I also should request to add other agricultural program run by DAE, because under those programs have lot of mechanization initiative or incentives embedded with their program. So what is the impact on that also? And I should request to add significant amount of light engineering survey, because I should request to have impact of light engineering sectors for spare parts market and scope for further improvement. Actually, I know combine harvester and others are coming. For the small engine, most of the spare parts are coming from our local market. How we can help our improved machinery small spare parts market? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Again, this is Dr. Mohammad Anwar Hussain, Principal Scientific Officer, Bangladesh Rice Research Institute. Some of the suggestions I made in the advisory committee meeting in the Ministry of Agriculture that may be reflected in the future study. I would like to mention another 2 points to include your next methodology. In your presentation, you mentioned the number of machineries on the basis of household percentage. Number of machineries per 1,000 household. This is one of the good information to know the status of mechanization. In another way, status of mechanization mentioned in different countries, that is the amount of power used per hectare. You presented the data up to 2018. In 2018, there was about 2.18 kilowatt per hectare in Bangladesh. Something, 2 point something. But presently, we have a average data that is 3.25 kilowatt per hectare. That is dramatically changed within this period. In the next study, I would like to request to calculate the power per hectare in our mechanization.
We got your point.
That is
any other point?
Another point is that in the first study, I also mentioned to collect the data on the basis of area, on the basis of technology, and on the basis of crop. I think that will provide good information for the.
That has been noted.
Okay,
in
thank
the
you, sir.
meeting. Thank you. So over to Dr. Firdausi Naher, if I am not wrong, in terms of.
Thank you very much. My name is Firdausi and I teach economics at Dhaka University. Thank you very much to Dr. Mehrab Bakhtiar and Dr. Ben Belton for your very interesting presentation. I have nothing against mechanization, just an observation. In slide 15, it shows that real wage rates have gone up, but real paddy prices have gone down. So I'm a little confused because labor forms an important component of the input costs. So that is obviously not getting reflected in the paddy prices. And if farmers face declining prices, that is a serious incentive for our farmers, given that our hard-earned rice self-sufficiency might be at stake. So if the government is promoting mechanization, that should be done with caution, because it is very important for our farmers also to get good prices for their products. And the other thing is that the kind of mechanization that we have seen, it's the small machines, the power tillers, the irrigation power pumps. So again, obviously, the size of the land parcel is a very important component out here. So maybe if we are going ahead with mechanization, then it has to be some kind of a customized mechanization which takes into account the small sizes of our land plots. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, please.
Thank you, sir. This is Sheikh Hafiz Rahman. I'm Deputy Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture. Thanks for this nice presentation. First of all, the mechanization, is it from, we are very much dependent on the foreign countries, especially for USA, China, or any other countries from, we are yes, this is imported mechanized. We have more than 100, or we are going to set up 100 export processing zone or economic zone in Bangladesh, already establishing it. My suggestion is to input in your research, please expedite the owner of the economic zone or the BESA or BIDA. They can expedite the businessmen to establish agro-processing zone in every single economic zone. And we can modify the model of the combined harvester and the riper, other imports item also, with the help of our local engineers, with the help of BUET, RUET, or others. Because we find lots of anomalies or lots of disturbance operating of this machine. So it's my suggestion. And businessman, one of the businessmen, he asked about the government intervention.
Continue.
Yes, obviously my suggestion is to incorporate these inputs and latest data and other mechanized crop, not only paddy, rice, paddy, or potato, go to other vegetables items also. Because we are producing lots of vegetables now. Maybe we are third or fourth in producing amount of vegetables in Bangladesh. And we are exporting also. Mangoes also could be a good item for this research. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you,
are running ahead of time. I don't know how much
we're already running a little behind, Dr.
Yes,
Talukdar, yeah.
So, what should be our strategy? Guide
It
us.
would be best to move on to the next presentation from Dr. Ansari, if the time permits. Yes. Yes, yes, of course. Yes.
Please.
Sir, we have an open discussion for. Sir, we can continue the open discussion now.
Yes.
We can
That we will do. What we will do, we will not see. I think we will merge two segment into
best.
one.
Yes, sir. We had an open discussion session
after
later.
This session, we will hear from
Dr.
Ansari, then conclude.
Yes, sir. With closing remarks.
Please, let us be very brief on the
Yes,
presentation.
Thank you. Very specific.
This is not any policy recommendation, because we are yet to give any policy recommendation. We will do it after the research.
Thank you, sir. This is Dr. Mohammad Mizanur Rahman, Senior Scientific Officer, Post-Harvest Technology Division, BARI. Just one specific suggestion for the research team, that
without for make the mechanization productivity gains and cost savings, the team must include the cropping intensity in the research, because before mechanization we had cropping intensity less than 2. It means we can grow 2 crops per year. For mechanization, we can now targeting to grow 4 crops per year. I mean the cropping intensity may be 400%. So to taking in this account, in this cropping intensity, we can make the mechanization out of limited scope of productivity or cost savings. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think we listened the same point from the tech. Sir, কিছু বলবেন? Okay. Any other? আপনি তো বলেছেন from ব্রি থেকে বলেছেন আগে? Okay. Okay, বলেন.
Thank you very much.
From FAO.
Thank you, FAO. Thank you very much for giving the floor opportunity for me. So in brief, some specific points I have to include some suggestions really. Actually, there is no question. Regarding important point, profitability increase or decrease in the context. Actually, this research claims that profitability, there is no gain in profitability due to utilization of mechanization. Here, a big observation from this team's research activity. So important thing is that here this conclusion claims.
No, excuse me, it's not a conclusion yet.
Oh, okay.
It is from the secondary data.
Okay.
You know that they'll try to have primary data collection from the field, and after that they will be able to have final conclusion. So
okay, fine.
This is a preliminary finding from the census, agriculture census and BASS data.
Okay, fine. So in this relation, there is my suggestion. If like that, my suggestion is to analyze, to give 2 comparative table with a labor without any machine cost, and another one is practically what utilization of proper mechanization. 2 land of plot will be compared data. Then I think this type of research will be more appropriate for that. Another number 2 points is that utilization of machinery for, I want to express regarding the scale of economy of machine utilization, particularly in valuation governance aspect. If we consider, based on one experience from rice RDP project implemented by Feed the Future Agriculture by USAID project, I have some experience regarding a scale of economy of utilization of machinery.
Yes.
That's a very important issue.
That's a basic question for any use of machines.
Yeah. Thing is that the valuation governance, inter-farm relationship and horizontal integration among the valuation traders, valuation actors, that should be a good cooperation that must be incorporated in this research, so that policy research should be more appropriate considering this valuation concept and utilization of this type of concept. Another point is that in good example for rice planter, that is just at the step of introducing in our country, it is not being utilized because of some important constraints that I can state here. For your observation, it may be useful.
Constraints will be identified through the research also.
Yeah. So important point for my observation and experience I have seen, rice planter actually very important for our case, but its cost effectiveness and utilization period, that is very important. So it should be looked into very closely. That is my suggestion. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We got your points. Sir, আপনি কি এখন বলবেন নাকি ওনার পরে বলবেন? ওনার পরে বলেন তাহলে। we can request our distinguished panelist from the private sector, Dr. F.S. Ansari, to make his comments at this point of the discussion.
Thank you very much. It's a lot of discussion already happened. I think I would like to thank IFPRI to invite me as a distinguished guest, moderator, the presenter, Professor Satrabundal sir, Mr. Anwar Farooq, and Mr. Wais Kabir. And especially I'd like to thank Mr. Jamil, who has introduced farm mechanization concept in Bangladesh, first time in Bangladesh. We are in ACI working not very long time in this industry, only 15 years. And by this time, we became the #1 farm mechanization company in Bangladesh with a complete range of farm mechanization solution in Bangladesh. This is our credibility, and this is basically the achievement we have made during this time. Why farm mechanization in Bangladesh is required, actually. I'll give some perspective, and then probably I'll add some questionnaire and also some kind of observation to the study. Basically, there are two purposes. One is that keep future farmer in the farming system, because farming is very tough and difficult. The temperature is growing, the muddy places. Nowadays, the farmers' sons are very smart, coming out from the school, having very smart jeans and shirts. They don't like to work very hard and long time in the farm. If they get a machine and do things very quickly, and they see the positive economic proposition, only they'll be interested to work. And certainly there are interest, and we can see nowadays many of the young people are going into the farms and making money out of it. Second is that basically improve the productivity. It is very much important. That is cost reduction. Whatever they produce, they can produce in a low cost. Time saving, quickly they can do it. Then reduce intercropping gap, because our land is very limited, very small. Our farmers are very small, like half an acre, average land. So they want to produce multiple crops, so they need space to produce one after another crops. And then reduce wastage also, very, very important. I think you'll be happy to know that if somebody harvests manually, he loses around 13% of the crop because of carrying, because of threshing. If they harvest by combine harvester, it is only 3%. The difference is 10%. With this kind of high price of paddy, you can imagine the cost they pay for the harvesting, practically it became basically break-even. So these are the reasons actually why they are. So now, what is the current status of the mechanization? During the presentation, I have observed very carefully, it was very much focused on rice, and very correctly they have done it. The reason behind, we are very much confined to the rice mechanization. And why rice mechanization? If you start from plowing, and then irrigation, and then transplantation, and then again spraying, and then after that harvest, and then finally the processing everywhere, more or less, in rice, we have complete our farm mechanization solution in rice. But what intensive, what kind of penetration we have? I think we have seen the data. Now they have given very carefully, very systematically, this data till 2018. But interestingly, after 2018, starting from the COVID and now, the situation is totally changed. Huge transformation in farm mechanization solution. And that is a totally different picture. Probably we need to extrapolate the research, the data, what they have done, maybe need to be repeated so that we can find the real picture of the solution. If you look at it was discussion about the kilowatt consumption in our country. Now, very correctly he said that in our country, over 3 kilowatt power consumed in 1 hectares of land. And when our coping intensity is over 2. Japan, on example, they have coping intensity only 0.7, and they use 14 kilowatt. So you can see the big gap between the current situation and the potential situation. That means there are huge opportunities of farm mechanization businesses, or the solution, or technology in this country. That's why we are in the business. Jamil Bhai in front of me, He's also sitting, and he's looking forward to do this kind of businesses also. And then, if you look at the, our per capita income, it is very much related to per capita income. This is the stage now, our per capita income over 2,500. And when the per capita income, it indicates from the global data, 2,500, then mostly combine harvester, rice transplanter, people generally start using it. When it was 1,500, that time Jamil Bhai has introduced tractor. And today the tractor industry is a very big industry in this country. We are all enjoying fantastic tractor industry growth and also tractor industry's profitability. So this is the current situation in this country. Now, what is the government subsidy? Government have now currently, they have delivered about 10,000 combine harvester. And many companies supplying this combine harvester to the farmer. And transplanter only 1,200. And also reaper delivered 6,000 and thresher delivered 5,500. What happened to this? How it is helping? Of course it is helping the farmer to improve their productivity. How it is helping to the government? Government create a big image in the country. Honorable Prime Minister even few days back talking to the press, and she mentioned very clearly that this government is providing subsidy to the farmers up to 70%. This is our credibility. Half of the population in this country are farmers. So we are doing good for the farmer. That is there actually. But what happened to the industry? If you ask me how much credit we have provided to the farmer, at present, any point of time, ACI Motor provide 1,400 crore taka credit to the farmer. Jamil Bhai can give also big number because he's many years in this industry. This is the situation. And what happened to the combine harvester? The combine harvester government has given subsidy 50 to 70%. And those who gave 70% even subsidy, they return their money in 10 months, only harvesting 2 seasons. They are not paying money on time. Even the most successful one. So what happened to that? I have calculated among 5-6 industry who we have supplied this combine harvester, we have around 600 crore taka credit to the farmer. So this is the situation now. And it is very difficult. We are managing to do it. We have to manage it. And we are very ambitious that we'll be able to manage it because using combine harvester is a fantastic positive economic proposition. If the penetration, it is indicated in the presentation, in the survey that below 1%, but now it is below 15, it is above 15% penetration of combine harvester, using combine harvester. And what benefit it is? Extremely positive economic proposition. If somebody harvests paddy manually, still 85% people harvest manually, and they pay to the labor 28,000 taka per hectare. When they buy service from the combine harvester service provider, they pay only 14,000 taka. Per kilo rice, they can save 3.5 taka. And if someone having his own combine harvester, his expenditure including fuel, labor, overhead, altogether is 6,000 taka. So you can see the fantastic economic proposition harvesting by the combine harvester. In one way, in operation, another way, very simple. Another way, basically, this is saving from losing crop. So this is interesting. And then it was not said very intensively about the performance or penetration of rice transplanter. Rice transplantation also very tiring job, labor intensive. And if somebody use labor, it is about 15,000 taka per hectare. If they buy service, 6,000 taka. If they use their own machine, very small machine, 3-4 lakh taka, it is only 3,000 taka. So these are the all economic proposition. So what happened? What is my conclusion? My conclusion is that I think this is a potentially viable industry in this country. We, the industrialists, we are investing, helping, teaching farmers, doing a lot of extensive services to them, for them. Now, many questions come out of it about the services. You'll be very surprised to know the service quality of this industry. Anybody, any farmer call from any location, in 6 hours within 6 hours of time, our mechanics reach there. And these mechanics were taken to Japan and try to rank them. Out of 15 engineers across the world, Bangladeshi 4 engineers got the best award. The quality of their knowledge, the way they operate and handle it. That means we don't have any knowledge gap. We don't have any problem with the services. Spare parts availability is there. So this is there, time bound, everything, fantastic. We monitor from headquarters. And then, now you'll be very surprised to know, we have introduced GPS in our combine harvester. With this GPS, the owner sitting in the home, he can see where, how much quantities of rice, paddy has been harvested, how much the driver got the payment, what difficulties he's going to face with the sensor, because the combine harvester having 6 sensors. Anything happen, immediately the owner can see from his house, and he can call and stop him and clean that hard particle, and then he run it. So this kind of efficiency, like a Western world, we're working in this industry. Very interesting. Now I'm coming to the area where the research can be conducted. That will be very useful for the industry. One is that cost of production, if somebody produce paddy or any crop, for the complete mechanization solution is very important. And this is also very important, the cost of production by region, because we have 22 or 24 regions in this country, so we need to do that. Then what kind of service charges the service providers are charging, that is also very important. What kind of mechanization solution they need, that is also very important. Whether parts are available or not, what kind of parts available and what kind of cost they're charging, these are all very important. And what frequency service is required, also very, very important. Expense to supply, expense. That, you see, we are supplying credit, and what kind of credit we are recovering and what kind of credit is lying in the field, that is very, very important. So these are the area, and also we need to find out what are the more mechanism solution is required for paddy and for other crops. We are only confined to the paddy, a little bit of corn, little bit in the wheat. So these are the very, very important we have to find out, and these data will be very useful for the industry and also government. What we'll do with this data, we'll work out our strategy and we'll plan for to find out the new solution and enter in this industry. These are very, very important, I think. And this, the indicators, the research, what you have given, fantastic, no doubt. I believe you'll do more research, and the research data will be available to us, and you'll use this data with a great value. Thank you so much, and wonderful research you have conducted and the presentation. I believe and look forward to see future new observation for our use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ansari, for your very comprehensive comment. So I think I understand that we have plenty of questions in our mind and also comments. We will encourage those. If you could send your comments and feedbacks through email to IFPRI, I think that will be very helpful for the research team. Before going to the closing remarks of Dr. Alan D. Brew, I think we have with us our very respected professor from BAU, Dr. Abdul Sattar Mondol. He was also a member of the Bangladesh Planning Commission, and at this point of time, professorial fellow at the Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies. Sir, আপনি চাইলে এখানে আসতে পারেন, sir, if you like. So over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me this special privilege, really. I need standing up and down, really. Okay. First of all, my appreciation to this IFPRI research team for taking up this agricultural mechanization issue very seriously and have done this scoping study in order to elicit more probing questions for further detailed analysis. Fine. And I also respect the comments and interventions from my colleagues around this room, really, which are very useful. I'm very sorry to come at the fag end of this session, really, but I try to be very precise. First of all, as a kind of reflection of my ongoing research on agrarian changes in Bangladesh in the auspices of the research capacity of the BIDS, where I am affiliated at the moment, gives me a wider kind of views about what is happening in Bangladesh agriculture. I am not going to give a big lecture now free of cost, really. Certainly, please excuse me for this. And we are now in the process of finalizing our first year research report on our scoping study on agrarian changes in Bangladesh. Mechanization comes up only an issue of this, or big contributor to this agrarian changes process, certainly the most important one. So on that view, I see this mechanization issue in a triangular framework, really. So for your further study, you can think of this triangle. Number one of this agricultural mechanization episode is to, first of all, identify who are the actors in this agricultural mechanization space. And definitely one would identify, first of all, this importer, distributor of these machineries, and therefore all these fiscal policies and issues which are very important for them, and then the local manufacturers who are manufacturing these, at least some of these major spare parts, and then growth of this machinery hub in Bogura, in Jashore, and many other places. And these about 0.6 to 0.8 millions rural mechanics who started their career in a local workshop. Now they have taken up this business. Please don't underestimate that what is happening with this. And many of them have become the local service providers. They are not very big, they are not rich, but they themselves are mostly farmers themselves. So they have their interest in production as well. And they have understood a little bit of business by this time through doing and practice, really. So they are the actors that we should bring in to understanding this whole mechanization episode. So this local service providers, as you said, this rental market is very important. Probably some kind of conceptual clarification would be needed. When you said that most of the machines are rented, I would like to see you that put it in a proper perspective, that not that machines are, most of the machines are rented. What is rented is the machine services, really. So don't, try to put it in the real perspective. Machines are owned by whoever is a one-seater. There are not many. I understand that. The second angle of the triangle of this mechanization episode is the user's angle, really, that who uses this machine. And definitely the farmers come first. But then in our agrarian study, it's amazing discovery in a sense, really, that who are these farmers? We have to ask this now, really. Farmers are not the traditional ones that we have known, our fathers or forefathers or uncles. Now it's a new entrant farmers. I call them new breed farmers in Bangladesh, who used to be wage laborers in many cases, but are endowed with relatively better family labor services, really. Not only themselves, but some of their sons, but many of their sons have left agriculture already, but at least the middle-aged farmers, who are the main actors now, have stayed there, and including their wives. And some school-going children are also coming in between their studies and helping in farming. And they're not big ones. They're small, and then I echo by that they're marginal farmers. And they do not have, in many, many cases, they do not have any land of their own, really. They rent land or lease market. So there has been a growth of land lease market, and which is part of this commercial agriculture. They are not big, 1 bigger, 2 bigger, 3 bigger, and then highly fragmented over the fields. But then the amazing thing comes on how these local service providers then make a reasonably good command area to utilize their 2-wheel tractors, 4-wheel tractors, and even this combine harvester, the big one really. And that is the amazing discovery that we have been made. It's called operational consolidation. They didn't have to buy all this land. They do not have to remove their aisles or boundaries really. But through a locally innovative contractual market, they have established a command area. First of all, we started in the 80s with this allotable command area, but that was a fixed asset. But now it is the mobile tractor. It's the mobile 4-wheel tractors and 2-wheel tractor, and then combine harvester. They contract all these users really through a contractual model, cash payment or hourly or whatever. That is innovative, and that is in our book in 2017. We wrote with Stephen Biggs and myself, it's the operational consolidation. It's not the ownership consolidation or thing. And that is not in line with the Punjabi technology innovation model that we have been used to. It is a Bangladeshi homegrown model, that how this fragmented land structure have been consolidated in terms of operation. There is certainly not the efficiency question that we have addressed quite earlier. But the conclusion is that it's not highly efficient system. It's a suboptimal fashion of resource use. But probably in a Bangladesh fragmented situation, we have to endure with that in order to keep up with the momentum of agricultural productivity growth really. And my third dimension of this triangle is the policy angle really. And that is very crucial. We have heard from our colleagues already that in the policy angle, first of all is financing this mechanization. And therefore, this question of bank lending and then subsidy comes in really. I am not going into details of that, but probably for IFPRI is a proper organization to take up a rigorous revisit of the subsidy program that has been on for about a decade now really. And now the current budget is 3,200 Bangladeshi taka. And then there are a number of machines that Ruhul Amin knows very well. So we have to revisit and check, is that a smart subsidy program? Or we have to revisit that really. Who has gained how much from this subsidy program really? And then is it equally applied for 2-wheel power tillers or for the large scale combine harvester? And I appreciate answer his point that combine harvester has been a magic machine really. You like it or not, you don't have to have that 1.7 million farm households of Bangladesh will have to buy, 17.5 million farm households in Bangladesh will have to buy each one of them a combine harvester. Each one of them will have to buy. What is it? It is the local service market. That is, so please rephrase our question that will the farmers be able to buy machines? No, they won't. They don't have to, because there has been a growth of a smart service market really. And that has been the crux of this matter. This importer, these distributors, they have taken advantage of this situation, but pity is that they have to do the re-lending themselves. And that is not the job of a distributor and importer. But they are pushing in a very hard time. They're pushing this really, and therefore they raise this question that, okay, we do not get bank loan, because they are acting as a kind of refinancer really. In a meticulous way, I have heard these stories really. That's not an efficient way of financing. So in the policy game, I would ask IFPRI to take up a serious revisit of this subsidy or financing issue. And on behalf of BIDS, at least for the moment, I would like to express our interest to join any of this rigorous study to revisit and then therefore you see what happened to the 3,200 Bangladesh Taka project, and then is it a good case for us to continue with this project in the present form or in some other renewed form? Thank you very much, Ruhul Amin. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. In fact, the objective of the research and the genesis, in the background, if we look at the first slide of Dr. Mehrab, that it's sort of process evolution of the ongoing project. In fact, the request was the way you spoke. The way you spoke about the research, the request was that way from the Honorable Minister and the Secretary. Thank you, sir. So I think we are at the close of the of today's session. I would request Dr. Bru from IFPRI, Senior Research Fellow, to make his closing remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ruhul Amin. Thank you, distinguished guests. I'm going to be very brief because I don't want to let the lunch get any colder than it already is. So a few points, though, that I want to close with. And one is that we've been talking about several trends that are not necessarily unique to Bangladesh, that lead to the rise of the importance of both agri-food value chain development and mechanization. One is when you have a growing economy, that means we also always see urbanization, we see declining agricultural labor force participation, and those trends mean that we need the agri-food value chains to function efficiently, to get food to people at reasonable prices, where they eat it, and we need mechanization to come in and fill the gaps in the production process where it substitutes for labor. I expressed earlier that we all want agri-food value chains to be efficient. And I want to adjust one thing that I said earlier, which is that we want higher prices for producers. What we've listened to for the last couple of hours is really what we want is higher margins for producers. So we want to find ways to make sure that the producers have higher margins, and their additional mechanization can potentially help, right? We also still want the lower prices for consumers. What we are exploring in our research kind of collectively is the role of finance in helping make these chains more efficient and making mechanization, facilitating mechanization of value chains. We talked about mobile money. You know, challenges with mobile money are the caps on transaction amounts and transaction costs that may limit its adoption in the use in agri-food value chains. Meanwhile, we see that we know that banks don't like to lend to farmers, and that's going to lead to these vertical financing models that we've essentially heard about, where bigger companies need to come in, purchase the larger scale machinery, and then finance the use of those, finance the use by renters, basically. So I see a couple of, so a few things that I think we can build upon in the research is coming at complexity more in the agri-food value chain research and understanding a bit more of the heterogeneity we see in our data. And in the project that we've just heard about on mechanization, I think understanding the service provider charges in great detail and how they differ by area, especially. Part availability, I thought, was an interesting point. To me, I think actually the amount that the machines stay idle, if at all, is a very important, it was missed in the discussion, but that will tell us about the profitability, particularly if the subsidies go by the wayside. Because if on the one hand we have 28,000 taka per hectare for labor, but 14,000 for mechanized services, if that mechanized service is actually subsidized by 50%, somehow that means that when or if the subsidies go away, they're about the same. That's a very broad back of the envelope calculation that I just did, but we have to think about how that would work. last point is that there are some great models in other places to look at. And I'm thinking of the entire time you were talking, I was thinking about a conversation I had with Jaleel Oliver, who's the CEO of Hello Tractor a couple of years ago, which is a business that rents tractors in Nigeria, which I would argue is a much more complicated business environment to try to make money in than Bangladesh. I could be wrong, but maybe I'm right. And in Kenya. So thinking about and then there are similar models in places in China that have mechanized, and it might be worth studying there. So with that, I'm concluding the workshop. I want to thank all of our distinguished participants for their great insights that we've learned from today. And I want to invite you all to lunch in the back. Thank you very much.